Hello, everyone. We should now be live. If you can hear us, say hello. We will be beginning in just a second. There is one question that immediately just came in that I want to answer. Read another review stating that the Surface Duo will ship with 8 gigs of RAM instead of 6 gigs. Please confirm. No, I can deny that rumor. It's 6 gigs of RAM through and through.
They didn't do a software upgrade to bring more RAM.
Downloadmoreram.com.
Yes,
Yes, it's 6
because
gigs of RAM.
the day one update, it actually ships with 24 gigs of RAM, but they're only allowing you to use 6.
The other amount of RAM is just for just to make it more expensive.
You can't repeat any of the info on this podcast unless you donate to our Patreon.
Oh dear, Dan, stop it.
That's how the internet works, right? You can't share things if you have a paywall and it goes beyond Patreon. I forgot.
Right, we'll be starting in just a second.
All right, I am sending out the tweet. DOS tweeted.
Sweet, I'm ready to go when you're...
Well, I got to retweet, so there we go. All right, I am, let me get my RTX up here. What episode is this? 192. All right, I'm now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 192 for August 21st, 2020. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, where we're going to discuss all things Microsoft, Windows, Surface, and Xbox. And this week we got quite a few things for you, including some latest news on Windows 10 and the builds that have been coming out there. Xbox Series S confirmed, and confirmed is in quotes. You can't see that, but I'm doing quotes. Well, let's talk about my Note 20 Ultra review. So Samsung's new flagship phone has officially gone on sale today. I've been using one for the last few weeks, and I posted my review. So we'll talk a little bit about that, specifically some of the Microsoft tie-ins that work well with it and why you may want to consider this if you don't want to get the Surface Duo. Speaking of Duo, we'll talk a little bit about media reactions to that device. We kind of hinted a little bit about this last week, but since then, a lot of press have come out with their own stories and takes on it, and the consensus seems to be kind of shifting in favor of Duo. There's a lot of people who are interested in it. That doesn't mean a device is perfect, but I think this is something we know the flaws of this device. We established them like 8 months ago, even longer than that. But now the question is, how well does the hardware work with the software? And that's going to be a real interesting part. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Speaking of delays, Halo Infinite has been officially delayed. That was actually news from last week that we didn't get to cover because all we did last week was talk about Surface Duo. But we'll revisit that topic this week as there was some updates to that story. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is, if you're not into video games, a lot of people seem to be into this one. And it's a really breathtaking, impressive game. There's been a lot of memes around it already, but it's been extremely popular. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I have begun to my flight training. We'll talk. See if Zach has begun as well. Other than that, though, let's get into it. Zach, how are you doing on this excellent Friday?
I'm not too bad. I'm just admiring my crazy hair today because it's been a while since I last had a haircut, and it's now what I call out of control.
Fair enough. Yeah, mine's doing pretty well. We do have things are more opening here, so I still don't go out very much, but it's Massachusetts is doing pretty well for this pandemic. But yeah, at least the weather is finally cooling off here. That's what I'm excited about. It's still warm, but it cools down at night. That's all I care about. I can't deal with the heat. But we are entering into exciting times. Lots of laptops will be coming out over the next few months because normally we have IFA coming up in September. IFA is still going on. It's just not there in Berlin, or at least I'm not going to Berlin, which is a real shame. You went with me last year to Berlin.
It was fun.
It's one of my favorite. It is actually my favorite trip to do of the year. Um, CES in Vegas. Vegas is an easy flight at least, but Vegas is like eh. But Berlin, I love you as a city. I've thought about moving there.
Wow.
Just well, yeah. I mean, why not? I can kind of live anywhere I want, right? Um, it's just it's a great city. And you and I did a burger tour, and
There
every
was
night we went
some
out.
great burgers there.
It's some really amazing burgers. A burger, beer, and like, the sausages and the sauerkraut. I could just live on that basically. So I'll probably die, pretty early, but I mean, I'd go out happy. So anyway, we expect over the next few weeks a lot of news coming out for new laptops. Of course, if you need a laptop right now, don't forget these won't be out until November, December, that kind of time period. So we still got a while to go, but there are exciting things coming. I already saw some stuff going on. One of my big complaints, one of the few complaints, is finally being addressed. And you'll see this. You can actually see it already. Huawei has their new MateBook X Pro, which we are not getting. Well, actually, we are getting it. I'm not getting it because Huawei US has kind of disappeared. So, which is a shame. Those are kind of fun laptops, but they are new MateBook X Pro. I think it's the MateBook X Pro. Is it the MateBook X? One of them. They shrunk it down from 13.9 to 13 inches, which is kind of weird. Still got the 3:2 aspect ratio. 10th gen Intel processors, Comet Lake. But the big thing that I was excited about is they got rid of the physical moving giant trackpad. Now, their trackpad's very good. I didn't have actually any complaints about it. It's one of the best out there. But I've been saying for a long time, this is the one thing that they need to, PC manufacturers need to do, is move to basically what Apple has done with a haptic trackpad system that uses sensors and no physical moving parts. And we saw this rear its ugly head with the XPS 15, which early on had some issues with a loose trackpad. You don't get that with a trackpad based on sensors. And Huawei is the first to come out with this for PC. And the reason this is important is because Huawei, LG, Lenovo, Dell, Microsoft, they don't actually make trackpads. They buy them from like Synaptics. So it's up to Synaptics to manufacture this stuff, which I presume they are. And then Microsoft does the drivers for it, which they're precision drivers. So in order for this to happen, you got to have that change at that manufacturing level. And it seems to be happening because I can tell you, not who, but other companies will be doing this as well. And man, I saw it. It looks so rad. I'm excited about this. This is the last few things I feel like PC laptops need to, really be competitive. Audio's been really getting good. Displays are great. So that's just a tease of what's coming up in the next few weeks. Whew, I did get too much sleep last night. Now I'm just rambling. All right, let's do the first topic, which is what? We're doing the latest on Windows 10.
Yeah, let's start with Windows 10 because we skipped last week, obviously. So anything that happened in the world of Windows 10 last week, we didn't talk about as we were too busy talking about the Duo. So I'll cover everything we missed last week and whatever happened this week as well in this segment, starting with last week's Insider build 2190. Nothing too huge in the build that came out last week. There's a new post-update experience, which is, I think, powered by the Tips app, and it will automatically pop up when you install a new feature update with all of the new features that have been introduced and sort of brief walkthroughs on how to use them. So for those people who've been complaining about how new features in Windows 10 feature updates are undiscoverable, this should sort of help towards that. I've not actually seen it in action yet, and it works in a limited number of markets in English locales such as locales such as US, UK, Australia, India, and Canada. There's also improved graphic settings in the build, so now you can mess around with some graphic settings in the modern settings app. So Microsoft is still doing its thing where they're slowly but surely porting over old legacy control panel elements to the modern settings app, and they have introduced some more graphic settings, which is super nice. And then that leads nicely into this week's build 2197, which has disk management in the modern settings app as well. So the old school disk management, which you can get access to by right-clicking the start button and pressing disk management, that is now in the modern settings app. And I'm assuming functionally it's it's at parity. I haven't tried it myself yet, but they say it's been rebuilt from the ground up with accessibility in mind, which the old one apparently wasn't. And that's basically everything regarding the insider builds. Microsoft has also started rolling out the Your Phone apps experience to the general public, so that's no longer an insider preview thing. That's now available to everybody. I've been trying it out. I think Dan has as well, and I think we both agree it's pretty damn good, right?
Yeah, and so this is still dependent upon you having a Samsung device, which is unfortunate, or a Surface Duo. We do know it's now officially coming to Surface Duo, which is rad. But yeah, I've been using it. We'll talk about the Note 20 Ultra later, but I've been using it with that phone exclusively. And the app streaming stuff is just really, really good. Like, it's pretty fast, man. Like, and maybe we'll see this roll out to other phones, but like I said, there needs to be a low-level driver to enable the direct connect kind of. It's kind of like a Wi-Fi direct to enable that, because this isn't strictly over Bluetooth. Yeah, this Your Phone stuff, it's really kind of changed my way of using Your Phone. Now, not to overhype it too much, I'm also one of those people that doesn't find a tremendous amount of need of running Android apps on my PC. Between PWAs and the store, I'm pretty well covered. But there are occasional little things. I know you said you use it for Authenticator, which is pretty cool. So when a notification, you can do Authenticator right on your PC directly, which is nice. I use it with my Tesla app. I can like warm up my car from because I can actually, you can pin it. So it's pinned to my taskbar. So I can just click it and open up the car and like warm it up, roll down the windows, do whatever I need to. So there are some neat functions. You can also stream media, which is nice. And I'll talk about that in regards to DeX later, because everybody loves DeX as a concept. But DeX has some limitations that Your Phone doesn't have, and that makes it a lot better. So,
yeah. So that's pretty much it regarding Your Phone as well. Elsewhere in the world of Windows this week, Microsoft announced that it's ending support for the legacy version of Microsoft Edge and ending Microsoft 365 apps and services supports for IE 11. This is kind of a big deal in the enterprise world. The loads of enterprises around the world are still using IE 11 for some reason. Many of them have built applications that require IE 11's rendering engine. Well, now, Microsoft isn't announcing the death of IE 11 here, that they haven't committed to an end of support date for IE 11. Microsoft is just sort of, I guess, soft killing it in the sense that all of Microsoft's own apps and services will no longer work in IE 11. This has kind of been the case for a while now. The Microsoft account website, I don't think works in IE 11 anymore. At least some of the pages don't. And obviously this is just going to extend that further. So beginning November 30th, the Microsoft Teams web app will no longer support IE 11. And beginning August 17th, 2021, the remaining Microsoft 365 apps and services will no longer support IE 11 as well. Microsoft will be ending, in addition to that, Microsoft is also ending support, so that's full-time support for the legacy version of Microsoft Edge on the 9th of March 2021 in favor of the new Microsoft Edge. So Microsoft has slowly but surely been pushing the new Chromium-based Edge onto Windows users across the world, and they're saying by March 2021, if you're still using the old Edge, you are on your own. Which I understand, the new Edge is an improvement in every single way. I know there's some diehards out there who are still hanging on to the old Edge because they prefer its UI or touch engine or scrolling capabilities or whatever, or inking. That's a minority, luckily. Everybody else, I think, agrees that the new Microsoft Edge is better in every way because it is. So that's the big browser news for this week. Again, Microsoft does highlight that they will continue to support Internet Explorer 11. That is a big deal for enterprises. There are many enterprises still using Internet Explorer 11. The ending of support for Microsoft Edge has nothing to do with the end of support of IE 11. As far as I'm aware, IE 11 doesn't have an end of support date. It's just supported indefinitely until Microsoft decides it's time to let it go. I wonder when that will happen. I'm surely it's got to happen soon or at some point, right? IE 11's been around since 2013, maybe? Been a while for one version of a browser.
It's definitely been around for a while.
Yeah, so sure. That's basically it for that regarding the browsers. I know people wanted us to talk a bit about that. Start using the new Edge. It's great. Just use the new Edge. Just get over the inking stuff. I realize it's fun, but the new Edge is better. Just use it.
Barnacles on Twitter who used to work at Microsoft, and
Mm.
he's pretty harsh on Microsoft a lot of times. He doesn't like the telemetry and all that, and I think he's a little unfair on that stuff, but he also is quick to call him out for bugs and stupid decisions.
Yeah.
But he started using Edge this week, and he even was like, credit where credit's due. This is a really good browser. And you see that a lot. Like the Wall Street Journal, I forgot her name, but she did a whole article about switching to Edge, and you're seeing a lot more high-profile people giving Edge a shot and actually coming, away from it, being like, "Wow, this is actually really good," because it uses less RAM. It's a little bit more efficient than Chrome, but you also get all the Chrome stuff now, right? The extensions are the big one. You can, whatever's not in a store, you can still install Chrome extensions if you want. And I know in Canary, and I think maybe in Dev, I'm not really sure. Canary, though, you definitely can install Chrome themes, which is kind of interesting. So if you want to skin your browser, it's not a radical change, but if you want to go jet black, you can now do that. Also saying Canary, you do get the really wild vertical tab option, which is where we used to see the where was that feature that would close all the tabs?
Set
basically.
tabs aside.
Yes, it tabs. So where that is now a similar icon, but when you would hit it, it would switch to vertical tabs. And you may ask yourself, why vertical tabs? And it's just a different way of orientating your web browsing experience. It's also a better way if you're like me. I'm looking at my browser right now. I probably have around 20, 25 tabs open.
Wow.
Because I just work behind a computer all day. I'm shopping. I'm doing work for the site.
Do you need all 25 tabs?
Yes, because a lot of times I open up a news story so I can go back and read it when I get a chance because I may be in the middle of doing something. But the problem with having all these tabs is if I look at them, they're like surf, how, can, belt, still, cough, am, goo. So I have no idea what they are, right? You can hover over them. But when you do the vertical tabs, you can basically see way more of the title. You actually see 5 or 6 words or even more than that. So you get to actually see what the tab is. It's a little easier to track. It also, when it switches to that, your top browser part gets super clean looking. It's just the title and there's nothing else up there. It looks really nice and it's good for people, I think, on ultra wide screen monitors. It's gonna be a little, and it hides too, which is nice. It's not perfect. It does screw with you. It's such a weird. It's like turning your monitor to the side. It's like. But you get used to it, and there's definitely a lot of practical applications. So again, that's unique to Edge as far as I know. I think there are other browsers that may do that, not 100%. But.
I see a few people asking about 20H2. What's the status of that? When is it coming? As far as I'm aware, 20H2 is done. There might be a couple more bug fixes and minor changes that roll out to the slow ring. But as far as I'm aware, that update is ready to go and will likely roll out in September or October. We are August 21st today, so we're not far away from that. The build you're testing is likely the air quotes RTM build for 20H2 if you're in the slow ring already. I'll be doing a video walkthrough next week, hopefully, going through all the sort of big changes and stuff. And then that should wrap up all of the big updates for Windows 10 in 2020, which leads us nicely into 2021. What is happening to Windows 10 in 2021? The answer right now is we kind of don't know. The dev channel builds that are in testing right now have a couple of the additional settings stuff that we just talked about, as well as that new what's new thing, but there's still no real big changes in testing with the dev channel yet. Of course, anything that shows up in the dev channel isn't bound to a release in next year, but many of them will be. I am hearing that there is some big UI changes in the works. I'm not expecting a radical redesign of Windows, but where elements are today, I'm expecting those to be updated with rounded corners and stuff. Rounded corners, I think, is going to be the big one for 2021. In fact, Xbox this week announced their new dashboard UI for the end of the year, and that's got rounded corners all over it. If Microsoft doesn't bring rounded corners to Windows 10 in 2021, then that's going to be a huge miss for Windows, and yet again leaving it out as the outlier when it comes to Microsoft's design. So hopefully they're working on that. In fact, as far as I'm aware, they are working on rounded corners for Windows 10. It just, apparently rounded corners can take a lot longer to add to the OS because you have to add it everywhere one by one. It's not like a universal switch that they can just code in and everything's rounded now. So that's probably why they're taking their sweet time with it.
Wait, there isn't a master registry? And in Windows, it just says corners, and you just change it from 0 to 1 for rounded. you got to reboot. You're gonna have to reboot, restart the shell. But when you come back, yeah, that'd be nice if it worked that way.
Yeah.
It's something that probably does work on 10X in the sense that 10X is built from the ground up to be this modern OS where they can kind of think of these problems in advance. But man, when they made Windows with the core of Windows for 20 years ago, and now all that code carried over to Windows 10, it's like it's a nightmare to update. Let's just say.
Obviously, we're also expecting Windows 10X in 2021 on single-screen, low-cost PCs. That's going to be quite interesting. Microsoft still hasn't technically announced the changes to Windows 10X, which includes the lack of the Veil container support, which means no local Win32 programs. Instead, they're supposedly relying on the cloud to stream legacy programs to Windows 10X PCs. That's going to be super interesting to see what happens there. Surface Neo. I know the rumor is 2022 will be when dual screen starts showing up, but I wouldn't be surprised if Neo shows up at the end of 2021. I think they need to get that hardware out sooner rather than later. Otherwise, we're going to fall into another Surface Duo situation where the hardware is launching with last year's specs, with a design that's, although modern on the outside, kind of dated on the inside, missing features that are expected of PCs that are releasing in that time. So yeah, Microsoft are between a rock and a hard place regarding the Surface Neo, but I think we might see it at the end of 2021. Hopefully, that is.
Sounds like a plan. And as I joked in the comments, no, Windows 10 is not ending. But they do have different priorities. And actually, Windows is a priority, but not in the way we necessarily want with like the 10X stuff. But no, Windows is not going away. It's actually, there's so much momentum behind PCs right now. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when it comes to Flight Sim, because that's expected to, that's driving a lot of sales of PCs, accessories, GPUs. NVIDIA is expected to unveil their next gen 3000 series there for its RTX series of GPUs, I believe at the beginning of September. So that's going to be really exciting. So no, PCs, fortunately, it turns out people actually need strong computers to still do a lot of work, and it's not all about Chromebooks or Macs for that. All right, let's turn to the Note 20 Ultra review. So this is live now on Windows Central. You can go check it out. Why did my video just drop out from YouTube?
I don't know, did it?
Mine did.
It should be fine. It's my phone on my end.
Yeah, it says went black.
You're right, it did go black. Can they still hear us? I don't know why that happens. That's so weird. It's back now.
Yeah, it's back. Did a cat hit a cable?
I don't know what happened there. That was strange.
Oh, it's black again. No, it's back. What are you doing?
I'm doing nothing. I haven't touched anything. All right. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just keep talking. I'll work through it.
All right, let's go. So Note 20 Ultra is that review is now live on Windows Central. You can go check it out. TLDR, I gave it 4.5 out of 5. It's a pretty good rating, I think. And I've been a skeptic of Samsung Android devices. I've always kind of appreciated them. The first one I bought myself was the besides the Windows ones, which were always plastic, was the S6 Edge. And that was the first time the hardware really impressed me. I was like, oh, okay, Samsung's actually getting to this kind of new level. And that was also the first one where the camera I thought was very good. That was back at the time where Lumias were still kind of going strong and the leader of photography. But the Edge was like the first, all right, Samsung's starting to finally figure this out, which goes to tell you how hard that was. That was the 6th iteration of the Galaxy series. And then I picked up the Note 9. I was in IFA Berlin, actually, and I was so impressed by the device. I was in the store. I bought it right then and there. And I really liked that phone, but it kind of faded for me after. And I eventually picked up the Mate 20X, which kind of really blew me away. My problem with Samsung devices has always been they just jam so much stuff in there. I didn't appreciate the UI stuff that they were doing. It was still clumsy and I felt slow. And I was having better experiences on Huawei devices and of course OnePlus, which really spoiled me. But since the Galaxy Z Flip, which I bought back in February, that has been my daily phone, and I actually been very happy with the whole experience there. The Note 20 Ultra, basically continues that. This is the first time I can say that Samsung's Android implementation feels nice to me. Like actually doesn't get in the way of the experience. It's fast, it's fluid. The One UI stuff is finally matured. Like it just feels like kind of like a normal Android phone in a lot of ways. There's not even a ton of Samsung bloat on this, which I was kind of surprised about. I mean, there's Pay, there's their default browser, there's their launcher, but there's no Samsung Music, for instance, and I think they got rid of that Milk thing, whatever that was. But they used to have like way more just like garbage kind of.
You can also uninstall a lot of them, right? Which is, I think, a really nice touch.
Yeah, I believe so. And so they still have the Galaxy Store where you can go get this stuff. But I was surprised how many apps are in that store from Samsung that are just not pre-installed in this device, which I really appreciate. A lot of people point out the ads. And here's the funny thing, like I didn't notice the ads because I don't actually use a lot of the Samsung stuff. I don't use Samsung Pay. And I don't use a lot of the other, I don't use their game launcher. I just, so I don't see that, but from my understanding, yeah, they still have like your reminders, kind of like what Microsoft does, with, trying to get you to use their other stuff. But there's not a lot of bloat on this. I don't feel like when I use this, Samsung is in my face anymore with their features and services. Let's talk about the hardware. I mean, it's not a lot to talk about, right? It's the pinnacle of smartphone hardware in 2020. There's no phone, as far as I know, that has this much stuff, jammed into it. So it's got, I'm holding it here, 3 cameras on the rear. One of those is a 108 megapixel, which if you come from a Lumia 1020, I mean, look how far we've come. Now, the 108 megapixel is cool. Don't get me wrong. It's neat to have. And if you're going to do some pro level shooting, it's cool. But if you're posting to Instagram, no one cares about 108 megapixels. You won't see it. You're going to lose all that visual acuity there. It does allow you, though, to crop to zoom, which is kind of neat. But you do have an ultra wide on there as well as the telephoto. And the telephoto changed from the S20. The S20's telephoto was like this 100x, and it just didn't look good. It was just way overkill. I think now it's like 50x, but the telephoto is really good on this. It's way more practical. In the review, I give a demo of just how insane you can zoom with this. The front-facing camera, it's a single pinhole, 10 megapixel right there, and it's a very good front-facing camera. Like it does edge detection very well and everything. Of course, you have Wi-Fi 6. 5G, including millimeter wave here in the United States, which is important for Verizon, who's been using that kind of exclusively. It also has a sub-6 stuff. It's got a SIM, micro SD expansion. Of course, it's got 12 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, or 250 or 512. And I believe they're using, I forgot what it is now, a new UFS. I think they're using it's really fast storage on this, basically, kind of like what PCIe is for PCs. In-screen fingerprint reader, which is not fast, but I can't really say bothered me. It's not really slow either. And you can kind of see on my always-on display, the fingerprint reader just stays on. You know where it is all the time. And the thing is, now we go out with masks on all the time. This fingerprint reader is a godsend. Like, probably one of the most annoying things about an iPhone 11 these days is it doesn't have a fingerprint reader. And I've been saying forever, by the way, it should have both because because each has its pro and con. I remember Tom Warren was giving me gruff on this. Like, no, the Face ID is so perfect on iPhone. You don't need a fingerprint reader. I'm like, fingerprint readers have their place. And then pandemic happened, and now everybody wants a fingerprint reader, right? I kind of wish it was on the back. I still appreciate the physical ones in the back, but when I go to a store, this is just way easier to use. The display, 6.9-inch AMOLED. I don't have much to say on it. DisplayMate did a really professional review, gave it an A+, its highest rating. It's just an outstanding display. And, the thing about OLED, Apple's done this too. OLED is not nearly as offensive as it used to be in terms of like it just didn't look real. This looks more like a typical LCD with just nice colors on board. 120 hertz refresh is really nice. Now it's adaptive refresh. That's to save battery. That means it's not 120 hertz all the time. And you don't notice, like I use the official Twitter app. And that scrolling on that thing is just, it's not very good. It's actually shocking how scrolling that app compared to iOS. It's just not very good. But if you use a third-party Twitter app, you do notice the enhanced scrolling. It looks way better. I just can't get used to the third-party Twitter apps anymore. I don't know why. But yeah, rose gold colors, one of the new options. I actually really like it. I have in this green case that I'm using. Type-C on the bottom, dual speakers, which are awesome. And then, of course, there is the S Pen that pops out. And what's cool about the S Pen on this device, as I mentioned, I don't use it a ton, right? It's not part of my daily workflow. That one time you want a pen to highlight something, doodle a note, do a drawing, it's so rad just to have it there. You just pop it out and now all of a sudden you got it. It also works as a remote shutter for doing selfies, which is neat because you can set the camera down, walk away, and then take a photo. I mean, there's a ton of these kind of little gimmicks that they do. But what's neat about them is if you don't use the gimmicks, so what, right? They're just there, then don't use them. It's no big. There's no negative to it. Let's talk a little bit about DeX. Everybody loves DeX because our audience is hooked on Microsoft Continuum. This is basically
no, Dan.
that.
Nobody loves DeX.
No. Everybody loves the idea of DeX. I'm here to tell you, DeX isn't that great. I was surprised it works on Surface Pro X because that's ARM. And the reason I say that is because in order to use it with PC, you need to plug it in, which is already kind of lame. You got to have a Type-C to C cable or Type-A. No, I think it's actually just Type-C to C. But you got to plug it in physically to whatever device you're connected to. And then you have to download and install an application from Samsung's websites that acts kind of as a host file. And so those two things already kind of like, all right. I feel like that's something that was 3 years ago we would do. But it works on Pro X, which was neat. And then you get it, you plug in, and it runs in a little window, and it's Android. Then I sat there and looked at the screen, and I was like, now what?
Yeah.
What am I going to run on this thing, right? So then I would try things like, okay, well, actually, maybe I'd run the UFC app. I like that's got a lot of live programming on it. There's no UFC PC app. Well, you can use the browser, but tried that. Sorry, content blocked. Can't do it. Same thing with YouTube TV. Sorry, content blocked. I was just like, well, that's lame. It works wirelessly for some reason, so you can connect DeX up to a smart TV, which is neat. I could see using that in a hotel when I'm traveling. I want to maybe watch UFC or something like that I can just kind of beam it to that smart TV. Kind of the downside is, though, even Samsung says you should have a 2019 or later smart TV to really enjoy its benefit. It's like, I don't know if many of us haven't been to hotels recently, but if you've ever been to a hotel, usually you're shocked about how it's a 720p TV, the bezels are 3 inches thick, and it's definitely not 2019, meaning it probably won't work with this, so you may still need to even plug it in. I don't know. So I found no... DeX is just... It looked cool, but I have no use for it. I'll say, though, like other Samsung features here, it's there. There's no harm in it being there. If you don't use it, you never know, right? I had this device for 2 weeks. I didn't try it till yesterday. That's how uninterested. And then I tried it. I was like, this isn't that great. Now, Microsoft Your Phone, as we kind of teased, connects at a low level, ultra low latency kind of connections, kind of like Wi-Fi Direct, and allows you to do the same thing. You can stream apps now, and you can pin your apps. You can do a lot more stuff, basically, is what I'm saying. Your phone is actually more powerful than this. And I could do stuff like play my UFC videos and stream them to my PC, and they're beautiful quality. Now, the audio doesn't get routed. I'd like to see Microsoft fix that. The audio comes through the phone, but it's synced, which is amazing. That's not something I expected. But your phone is just way more practical because it's more integrated into the operating system. You can text directly. You can make phone calls directly. I love getting notifications. You can reply to them in line, which is really neat. You can view your photos directly and then save them directly to disk. You can copy and paste information back and forth. I just don't buy this because it's got DeX or you think you're going to start using DeX. Maybe there's like a few of you who actually do use this as a thing, but I feel your phone is just a way better, more modern solution. That's completely wireless too.
Your phone is the reason why Microsoft isn't doing its own version of DeX on the Surface Duo. Your phone is essentially their version of that. And DeX, and actually, Dex is the reason why I'm convinced Microsoft will never do a Surface PC running Android. I've seen a lot of Microsoft bloggers and people online talking about now that Microsoft has jumped into the Android world, it's only a matter of time before we see a Surface Go with Android or a Surface Pro with Android. I'm gonna say now. And listen, I would put money on this. An Android tablet, a Surface tablet, will never happen because Android sucks on tablets. The only thing Android is good at is phones. Devices with screen sizes less than, I guess, 7 inches, since Dan's is 6.9 inches there. It's Microsoft's Android apps, yes, they do support tablets, and I'd argue are some of the better Android tablets apps out there. But that's it. Everything else says no go. There's no point doing it. You might as well just use a Windows PC or an iPad. And even Panos has said this himself in interviews and whatnot. The reason Surface Duo runs Android is because of the mobile apps, but anything the Surface Neo screen size is above that, Windows is superior. Windows is better in every way, and therefore that's what will run on those products. I would be incredibly shocked if we ever saw a device, a Surface PC, whether it be a Surface Go or Surface Pro, running Android or anything that isn't Windows. Windows is the choice for Microsoft everywhere except the phone, which is why Surface Duo is a phone, which is why Surface Duo doesn't have something like Dex, which is why Dex is stupid. It just is. Because especially with the app, the Windows app, you're running a Windows PC already. Just use the Windows apps. There's no point.
That's how I feel. And I just don't, we've talked about this before, Continuum. Yeah, people say, but you need a PC to make your phone work. It's true, but I just don't see people traveling with a pocket PC, a literal one, a Type-C cable, and hopefully maybe HDMI and a mouse and then a keyboard, and going to a hotel room. Like, you and I have shared a hotel room when we travel. Like, sitting in front of the TV is not like, it's not like an awesome desk. Right? A lot of hotel rooms don't have it. Like, it's just not practical. Most people will be like, I'll just take my laptop. Like, that makes a little bit more sense than using a slower kind of device. Someone brought up, what's the frame rates? Isn't it like capped at 30 frames probably for your phone? I can't. I
think it might be 60. It might
be 64. Yeah. All I know is it looked great. Using Dex didn't look any better, not even connected up. And considering I couldn't play any of my media stuff and stream my apps, the frame rate was 0. So, I don't know. I feel like Dex is going to go away, and it probably should. It's just, it's, they've tried it for years. They remember the dock that they had, right? That had a little fan built into it to cool down the device. Like, it's not even for sale anymore, I don't think. Like, it's just not going anywhere. But your phone is way more pragmatic in how we use devices. So I like that. So that's your phone, Dex. But yeah, now the phone is $1,300, which is not cheap, right? We'll get into that whole issue. A lot of people are struggling right now. Not a device they can go get. I will say Samsung is offering, kind of like Microsoft is doing with Duo, really good trade-in deals. Up to $650 for your old phone. Granted, that's newer phones, usually last year's model or something. But hey, you take $500, $600 off of $1,300. That is, brings it back down, right? Makes it a little bit easier to swallow. AT&T and some carriers in the U.S. are also running some very good upgrade deals, all this kind of stuff, because they kind of know. Don't buy this for the 5G. I still find 5G completely overrated. It's not very impressive. I did try it on T-Mobile's 5G. Sure. I said before that 5G is really cool on a laptop where you're going to transfer big files, do video conferencing. I can't say it's a benefit on this phone. So don't buy it for that. Don't buy it for Dex. Buy it because you want a really good camera system. You can go see my sample photos, including the depth of field test I did, which is it's very good depth of field on this thing. It looks like a DSLR. It's really crazy. Buy it for the display. It's really good. It feels nice too. It's not too big because they kept it narrow. So it's a little bit taller than the Note 9, which is what I was kind of comparing it to in the review. It's a few millimeters taller, but it's not wider really. So it doesn't feel bigger. And it's almost the same weight. It's like 7 grams difference, which a human can't detect that. So it's basically the same weight. Now, battery life is okay on it. This is at 120 hertz. It got me through the day. Like, I mean, by the end of the day, I was at 50% battery, but that was on kind of light usage. I could see if you're going to use the camera a lot and you're on inking all the time, like you're going to push it. And towards the end of the day, you're going to, battery fatigue. This won't be a 2-day device if you're a heavy user. It gets around 6 hours of screen time, which is actually very good. It does recharge quickly. They have a 25-watt charger in a box, which is not 45-watt, which is unfortunate, but it recharges quickly, has Qi wireless on it. I love their coils. They tend to spread their coils out a little bit more on this. So there's no when I throw it down on a Qi charger, it basically connects every single time. There's no my iPhone, I feel like I have to kind of move it to find that sweet spot. Look, this is the best phone I think you can buy right now in 2020. If you want the phone that does it all, this is going to be it. The Microsoft stuff works well. OneDrive built into Samsung Gallery, which is super nifty. So if you have that, you enable it, connects up to your account, your photos get uploaded automatically. I actually really like Samsung Gallery. It does this cool feature. So if you use a 108 megapixel camera, the photos are 17 megabytes in size, which is massive. But if you switch to HEIC instead of JPEG for saving, it cuts them down to 7 or 8 megabytes, which is really nice. The problem with that format, that codec, is Windows recognizes it, but things like Twitter and sometimes Instagram doesn't recognize it. But if you share from the Samsung Gallery, it'll convert it for you, which is really kind of cool. Yeah. It's JPEG. Yeah. So you get that nice feature. It ships with LinkedIn, I think OneDrive, Office, and
Outlook.
And Outlook, as built in for Microsoft. They're actually, when you do the out-of-box experience, you're given a choice if you want to install those. So you're not even forced to. There's supposed to be this feature with the Samsung Notes app, which you use for the doodles and note-taking, and syncing to OneNote. I haven't been able to figure that one out yet. I don't know if that's not out. It's coming.
Samsung is very good at announcing features with new devices and then taking months to actually put them on the device. The Note 10 that came out had the gallery, the thing you just talked about, OneDrive gallery integration. But I had the Note for about 2 months before that actually showed up on my device. So Samsung's good at being like, oh, by the way, our new phone has all of these features. But a lot of the time, those new features take a little while to actually show up, which is kind of naughty of them, but oh well.
Yeah, if and when that shows up or I figure it out, I'll do a quick article on Windows Central because that's kind of neat. The idea here, so one of the cool things about this device is when its screen is off, and I have the always on display on, but I pop the pen out, right, and the screen is off, it goes into this note-taking mode, and I can just start taking notes and start doodling. So it's cool because you can just quickly take a note versus turning it on, finding the app, launching the app, and going to pen mode, right? You just go right into it and you can control it all and you can save it. Having that be able to sync up to OneNote, of course, will be magic, right? Because then you can go back to your PC, open this up on OneNote, and then continue the work or reflect on whatever it was you took as a note there. So that's going to be really, really neat. And that's kind of what you're getting here with this. Is this slightly tighter Microsoft integration, which it's nice to see. I mean, and people have asked me, you can sync the Samsung Calendar app that's built into the device. You can sync your local Outlook calendar to that and vice versa. It doesn't work on mine, as Zach knows, because that's a funny other story that Zach and I have been naughty with Android builds of Outlook that we weren't supposed to have. And I turned on features I wasn't supposed to be able to turn on. And now it's kind of screwed up my account a little bit. But for everybody else, it should work fine. So it's neat because that ties into the Samsung stuff. So I think I've been really, really just way happier with this than I thought I would. Because they said, I got the Note 9. I thought it was cool. But after a few months, I put it down, went to the Mate 20X. This is just it's a pretty wild phone. It's pretty great. Now, Duo, right?
Are you saying it's better than the Duo, Dan? Just say it now.
No, I mean, the pragmatic answer here is Duo versus this device, right? I mean, come on, you guys are all smarter than this. If you have $1,300, it's going to go further buying the Samsung device. There's no doubt about it. You're getting a faster processor, 5G, way better cameras, 120 hertz display,
NFC.
NFC depends. But do I really need to spell this out, right? But the reason you're buying a Duo is not for that stuff. Where especially I'm working from home now. I don't use half of this. I had to struggle to take photos because I only go out so often. But the Duo is a completely different experience. And Zach, why don't you kind of lead this talk? Because what you want to focus on is sort of what other people have been saying about
Yeah.
that. And specifically, Dave Lee, Dave 2D, posted a video today. He has an engineering sample, couldn't show the OS, but he shared his thoughts on the hardware. And he said, quote, "It's an engineering marvel." He was truly kind of blown away by how good the hardware is. And something I've been saying since November, you and I were joking about, which is how thin this device is. You don't appreciate it until you pick it up. But what have you been seeing on the internet regarding this?
So I think people are starting to realize with the Duo that the money you're spending on it isn't with the usual stuff you expect from a phone. Like, as you mentioned, all of those features that the Galaxy Note has, the Surface Duo is likely missing. But that's not what the Surface Duo is about. The Surface Duo is about the form factor. It's about the physical appearance and functionality of the device more than anything else. With Gen 1, that's its number one goal, and that's what you're paying for when you buy this device. And I think a lot of people online and in the media are sort of starting to realize that as review units go out and as people start to get their hands on it. As Dan mentioned, Dave Lee on YouTube called it an engineering marvel. He is fascinated by how thin this thing is, how the hinges are perfectly balanced, that you don't, it doesn't require much force to interact with them, but they're strong enough so that they can stand on their own without flopping around. There's so many small and intricate details that Microsoft has gone to perfect the Surface Duo's form factor that you don't see it in the press renders. You have to feel it to understand what they're talking about, and that's really where the money is. That's really what you're putting your money down for Surface Duo version 1. That, and obviously the promise that this device will make you more productive when you're out and about and stuff. And at first there was lots of outrage about the specs and the fact that it's missing NFC and wireless charging and 5G. I'm not paying $1,400 for a phone that doesn't have NFC. Are you kidding me? Like, I saw lots of those comments. But as you know, it's been about a week since then, a bit longer than that. A lot of people have come around to the idea that actually this product is pushing something else. The money that I'm putting down for this idea is different. And I think a lot of people understood that when they watched Panos Panay's press briefing, where he sort of for 35 minutes sat down with the public, or at the time the media, and said, right, this is what the Duo is about, here's how you use it, here's some of the scenarios we envision people will be doing on this device, and it'll be coming soon. And after you shared that on Twitter, and after you shared that, a lot of people replied to you saying, oh, I've actually pre-ordered one now. I wasn't going to pre-order it, that's too much money, but now I see what they're focused on here. And this is what Surface is about, right? Surface is all about this.
Let me just interject. I don't want to share exact numbers, but we can track. So we do affiliate linking on Windows Central. That's one way we make money, which is by tell people, if you want, disable the ads. I don't really care. I probably shouldn't say that, but I understand, right? But we make, a good percentage of our money, because if we talk about a product and it interests you and you're like, I want that, and you click that link, we get a percentage of that sale, which I think is totally fair, by the way, because I know it sounds like sketchy, but at the same time, it's like if we're writing articles to recommend a Sony device, a Microsoft device, and then you buy it, like, why don't I get a portion of that? Anyway, and I don't personally get a portion, by the way, the company does somewhere. The reason I bring that up is because we can kind of track indirectly and directly how many people have pre-ordered the Surface Duo. I don't want to throw out an exact number because we know it, but I'll just say comparatively to other Surface launches, this is high. We're seeing a lot. We were actually surprised about the amount. It's a few hundred. I'll just say that. It's a few hundred people have already pre-ordered just through us directly, right? So that doesn't count all the other sites. People went to Microsoft.com, going through Best Buy and all this kind of stuff. It caught some of the people higher up in our company who monitor this stuff. Like, I'm not saying it's selling gangbusters, and it's going to sell out. It's going to be this huge hit, and watch out, Apple. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying our expectations were, this has already beat our expectations for what we were anticipating. So it seems to be happening.
I know a few hundred doesn't sound like much compared to an iPhone, but you got to remember this product was never supposed to sell like an iPhone sells. I don't even think Microsoft is expecting to sell 1 million of these, at least not of Gen 1. I think I think their estimates are pretty low for this, and that's fine for a Gen 1 product as long as they break even on it, which I think they might, considering how expensive it is. They might. I think they'll break even on it as long as they sell what they're expecting to sell internally. Then this product cannot be deemed a failure, even though it is missing NFC, even though it is missing 5G, even though a lot of people have written it off because it's so expensive for the features you're getting. The people who will buy it will be buying into it for the reasons I just described, for the form factor, for the hinges, for the dual screen setup. Dual screens, again, being one of the actual selling points. It's not a compromise because folding screens aren't ready. The dual screens is a deliberate choice by Microsoft. They genuinely think dual screens make you more productive than a single screen. Microsoft could have done the single screen. They did Andromeda prototypes with single screen, but they decided that it was important to have the productivity aspect, but also the ability to use it as a single screen phone whenever you want to as well. So yeah, it is. The Surface Duo is a unique device. We were sort of half comparing it to the Note there. It's an unfair comparison, right? They're two different form factor smartphones. They are both phones that fit in your pocket, but the form factors are different. Just like how the Surface Pro and the Surface Book, they're both PCs, but they're different form factors. You wouldn't really compare a Surface Pro to a Surface Book, would you? It wouldn't make sense to do so. The same thing here. You're not comparing a Surface Duo to a Note 20. And even then, I wouldn't even say it's fair to compare the Surface Duo to a Galaxy Fold. I realise that they're much more similar in form factor, but there's so many differences in the use cases between dual screen and single screen that I think that negates the comparison a little bit, especially considering the Fold would probably be way more expensive than the Duo anyway. I don't know if it's fair to compare them. The closest thing you can compare it with is the LG V's, the Velvet, or whatever the dual screen latest one is, and in which case the Duo wins, regardless of specs, because the Duo has actually been built from the ground up with dual screens in mind. The LG Velvet is a single screen phone with a crappy dual screen extension that you can add to it if you want to. The OS doesn't really care about it. It's a terrible UX experience from a software perspective, whereas on the Surface Duo side, the OS has been built from the ground up for this dual screen experience. It's fluid, it's fast, it's designed for this. And I think that's where I'm actually going to write an editorial next week about this. The Surface Duo success will hinge on the customizations and enhancements Microsoft is making to Android on the device. Those gestures, the ability to pick up and span, the ability to flick things between the screens, that is all super important, all of which cannot be done on any other dual screen phone before. The LG series doesn't have that intuitive UX, because LG didn't put the time and effort in to do it, but Microsoft did, and that's going to be a really key differentiator between both products, in my opinion.
I just want to address a couple of things. First of all, some people are saying, did you guys notice the Duo 2 in the MKBHD video? He's referring to the black prototype.
Oh, the Andromeda.
Can you explain how, because I've seen other people say this now, like, that's the Duo 2. It's not Duo 2.
No,
explain.
So the Duo as a project has been in development for a lot longer than just the last year. This product started development 2015-2016 and was cancelled midway through. It was originally codenamed Andromeda and was supposed to run Windows and launch in 2018. Running a Snapdragon 845, it was supposed to have, I think, a 12 megapixel camera, 6 gigs of RAM, and run Windows Core OS, specifically Andromeda OS. That project was killed at some point in 2018. And for a little while, that project was dead. But then Microsoft internally revived it under a new code name, Epsilon. They took that hardware, refined it a bit, and then launched it with Android, known as the Duo now. The hardware you see in that Panos video with MKBHD is actually one of the last Andromeda prototypes. I think it's an EV4 prototype, which had a camera, an external camera, and a number of... It was metal instead of glass, which is the Duo is, and a number of different changes as well. The selfie cam on the inside is above the left screen instead of the right screen. There's a number of different changes, but for the most part, the hardware is the same, but those key differences, as I mentioned there are differences there. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that they made those changes. I'll probably get into them another time, but the Duo, the device you're seeing in that video, is technically older than the Duo that we're seeing today. That's an older iteration of the hardware. Microsoft has since refined it, and what we have today is the latest version of that hardware, not including the actual Duo 2, which is in development right now internally.
And that's not to say that some of what you see in that video, that device, may not happen. Like, we are expecting, or wouldn't be surprised if they bring back the rear-facing camera.
Yeah,
but there were engineering challenges to that. There was aesthetic reasons. They didn't like the way it looked, because it would be kind of gangly in the back. If you look at Duo right now, it's just beautiful smooth all glass
Yeah.
design. There's also pragmatic reasons, which is it's got to fall back on itself. They had to cut out a notch on the other back of the display so the camera could fit into that. So when you closed it, and that could result in cracking and engineering challenges.
There were a lot of compromises with that EV4 Andromeda prototype that they've sort of solved with the Duo that's shipping. Although it means less features, overall the product is air quotes better. I think there might be a bigger battery in there as a result as well because it has one less camera. Aesthetically, it looks better because there's no stupid camera bumps on the outside or camera holes or divots in the other side of the device for the camera bump. And a whole number of others. Also, the device was metal, which I heard the reason it's not metal anymore is because those metal units got scratched up so easily. They dent it. Just looking at them would dent it. So if you want your device to last long.
Even Dave Lee was surprised. I thought it was funny. He was surprised that Duo is glass on the outside. It's Gorilla Glass. Because I thought it was a well-known thing. Yeah, it's glass on the outside and the inside. The whole thing is glass. There's also another reason, but he pointed out, he's like, this is probably good because metal would scratch, and you're going to have it for a couple of years. It's going to get pretty messed up. But glass, you won't have that issue. There's also glass is better for heat transfer, as in it doesn't transfer heat very well, versus metal. Could you imagine having metal in such a thin device, and you have the processor on the other side? That's where you get the warm spots on devices, which has been kind of solved on a lot of phones. It's not a common complaint anymore. But I can imagine on this device being so thin, if it had a metal chassis, you get that hot spot there in the back where I think glass is going to be better at not allowing that to happen. Mm-hmm. So that is not Duo 2 in that video. Please, if you're on social networks, you see people saying that, you can correct them. You can cite Zach here. That is not that. That's not to say we may not see that stuff. I think it's safe to say Duo 2, whatever it is. I mean, it'll probably be called Surface Duo. I don't think they'll actually add a 2 to it, but maybe they will. I don't know. But whatever that's going to be, it's going to probably have NFC. It may have Qi wireless. It'll probably have at least a better camera, if not a secondary camera. But I said on previous podcasts, that's low-hanging fruit technically. They're engineering challenges that they need to solve. But it's like they don't need to invent NFC. They don't need to invent Qi. They don't need to invent cameras, right? They did need to invent this form factor, this hardware, and as Dave Lee points out, how perfectly balanced it is. So it's not like they put a battery on one side and it's hollow on the other side. This thing, it feels perfectly balanced. The hinge is a ton of work went to that. The display themselves are the thinnest in the world. And this is why, this is another kind of story that kind of came out today. Best Buy is selling the Duo, and as expected, they will have the Duo on display. I don't know if it'll be behind a glass case or it'll be out in the open, which I presume it will be, but you should be able to go to the store in the next week or two, see the Duo yourself. I would strongly encourage you to do this because I know I'm a Microsoft fan, but the reason I was impressed by Duo was because I got to hold it and play with it back in October last year. And when you do, the first time, you're like, oh, I kind of get this. And Dave Lee, watch his reaction in the video where he says, I have never held a mobile device this thin before when it's open. He's like, it's kind of weird to have an electronic device that thin that you can hold. And you only get that experience not by looking at renders on the website, not by looking at the spec list or the price tag. You can only get this experience when you actually see one in person and pick it up yourself. I'm telling you, when you do that, you're going to be like, all right, it's still maybe not for me. It's still too expensive. I still need it. You may still have those reservations, but you're going to get why everybody is kind of like, oh, this is different. They did a lot of work here to make this all happen. I think it's really important.
I have seen a lot of people ask as well. Well, if they've made all these sacrifices for Duo V1, what will change to allow things like NFC or 5G with Duo V2? And there's a number of answers to that. Obviously, Microsoft could make it thicker, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they're going to try and keep it as thin as feasibly possible. But what also happens is other tech in other areas improves and changes. The processors get cooler and more energy efficient, which means you can put smaller batteries in them and still have all-day battery life. So a smaller battery means more room for other things. Not only that, but processors and 5G chips can combine. So with the Snapdragon 875 that's coming next year, I guess, the rumor is that the required 5G chip, a separate chip on the motherboard currently with the 865, will be part of the system on a chip with the 875. That's a whole nother part of the motherboard freed up for something else. That's when they can add, I don't know, NFC or a wireless charging coil. So things, when technology improves in other areas, it allows Microsoft to condense space inside the device to make room for new features. That's how this usually works. I'm not an engineer by any means, but I think that's how this works internally when you're building a device. You have to wait for other people, other components to improve and condense and merge to make room for other things that you want to add to the device. And I think that's what we're going to see with Surface Duo 2, a lot of that internally to make room for NFC and 5G and whatever else.
Yeah, even the camera. I mean, I was just talking about Samsung's 108 megapixel camera, but like they could only do that because Qualcomm's chipset supports that kind of size of an image. This was the problem the Lumia 1020 had when it came out. That it was such an advanced camera, but the chipset didn't support the rendering of images that high. So Nokia had to do this like weird hackery trick to trick the OS into it. Because I remember Microsoft didn't even know that was happening, and they're like, had we known they're working on this 41 megapixel thing, we may have been able to work with them and Qualcomm because remember the 1020, for as good as the camera was, it was slow as heck, like in terms of taking photos, and there were some limitations and stuff, and this never was truly solved. So, as the camera tech evolves, different battery technology evolves, for all we know, they're working on a new advanced camera module that's going to be smaller and better, but maybe it's not ready right now to bring to market. So, the important thing with Duo is it's not a sprint. It's going to be a journey.
Yeah, regardless of how well Duo 1 does, we will be getting a Duo 2. I think that's a given. I know a lot of people think this is going to be dead in the water and that those buying into Duo 1 won't have anything to upgrade to. A Duo 2 is coming. If only I bought a Duo 1, a Duo 2 would still come. Just like how Surface RT, nobody bought that, but they pushed on to Surface 2 anyway. Nobody bought that one as well. They still pushed on to the Surface Pro 3, and that's when things started to change. Microsoft doesn't just try once and give up, at least when it comes to Surface. So for those who are worried about that, you've at least got two more, or at least one more Surface Duo to come before they decide to pull the plug, which I don't think they will. I think this is Panos' baby, remember? Panos has always wanted to do a phone. This is that, and he's going to push this as much as feasibly possible to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, as people point out, it's Microsoft Kin, it's Microsoft Connect, it's Windows Phone. Like, the problem with saying that, first of all, a lot of those examples are very old. Like, if you mention Kin, you're kind of old. Like, most people, you kind of are. Like, to go back to, like, what was that, 2011, I think that was? Like, to go back that far in tech and remember that as
I'm not that, but I still have a grudge about it. Like, get over it.
Yeah, like in 2020, like, what's wrong with you? Second, I would also say that this is a Surface device. Name me the last Surface product line that's been canceled. The most you could say is Surface RT.
Right.
But that really wasn't about the hardware being canceled so much as the operating system being canceled. And even then, it wasn't so much that the operating system. They did the $900 million write-down, not because of RT. They did it because they had too much stock.
Yeah,
I've said this
over
and over.
They made too
many. They made too many devices, and then those devices didn't sell. That's the write-down, right? Had they scaled appropriately, they would have been fine. And this is a lesson that Panos has basically said, we're never going to repeat that again.
Yeah.
Which is why you're going to see this slow, controlled rollout of this. It's the overstock. When you go, we're going to make 1 million of those phones, and then you sit there and wait to sell 1 million, and you sell like a quarter, right? That's what does a product line. But Surface Pro, still going strong. Surface laptop, we're on the 3rd version. We're expecting 4th later this year. Surface Go just hit version 2, seems to still be doing well. Surface Book, heck, it did so well, they made a 15-inch version, right? And they've been adding GPUs to that going forward. I mean, even laptop did so well, they're let's do a 15-inch version, right? And they did two 15-inch versions, AMD and Intel. You have Surface Hub. None of us bought a Surface Hub. They did it so well. Surface Hub 2. And those things do sell, by the way. HoloLens. None of us really bought a HoloLens. So Zach and I did, but HoloLens did so well. HoloLens 2. And I remember we were talking to Greg Sullivan about this when that launched. And he's like, yeah, we already got tons of orders. It's like we sold more than we anticipated. They're going to have to bump back production. And then they expanded to different markets as they ramped up production for that. Because HoloLens 2 was only available in select markets as well. As they were able to build up production and to meet demand, they then expanded to other markets. That's just how they roll. But there are no Surface devices that have been canceled. That's Windows true. Phone is not Surface. It wasn't. And there's an article going back to 2015 where I said, where Panos announced the Lumia 950s. And I was like, he did this, but what was he really telegraphing? He pulled them out of his back pocket. He's like, oh, we got these things coming next. They weren't his devices. And yeah, it was under his tutelage at that point, but he was just like, I didn't make these, we'll sell them, but this is not how I would have done it, right? But this is a Surface device. Surface devices don't get canceled Gen 1.
Yeah,
they don't. There's no precedent for it.
And the closest thing to a Surface being cancelled is, as you mentioned, the Surface RT line with Windows RT. Those became the Surface 3 and Surface Go, so technically not cancelled. But even
a little bit of Pro X.
And,
right?
Exactly. So I wouldn't call them cancelled at all. The operating system was indeed cancelled. I agree with that. And the first two products were sort of killed off quite early because of that, the operating system being left behind. But what was the reason for that? Why did those products get left behind? Why did Windows RT 8 fail? Apps. It's all about the apps. Why did Windows Phone fail? Apps. Do you know what Surface Duo doesn't have a problem with? Apps. There's no reason for this device to fail in the traditional sense that Kin, Windows Phones, Windows RT, all of those platforms or devices failed for, because Surface Duo has solved the number one issue that all of those efforts had, and that was a lack of apps. Surface Duo has all of the apps in the world. There is no problem here. The Duo had somebody walking into a shop and sees a Duo, if they're interested and the price isn't an issue to them, there's no caveat. Oh, by the way, it doesn't have all the apps that you want, right? That issue is gone. That's the number one issue that people have with Microsoft's past efforts. No longer a problem with Surface Duo. So,
and it bears repeating because people still confuse this. Duo does not treat Android apps as tablet apps, because I know the tablet experience is
they're phone apps,
different and not as good. This is a straight up. It treats them as phone apps, and there are no limitations. It doesn't need to support spanning in Microsoft. You can install Snapchat, whatever app is going to just install on this, just like any Android phone. So there's literally zero incompatibility problems. I'd also say RT failed because of Windows 8.
Yeah.
Because Windows 8 failed itself. Right. The whole operating system failed. It almost took down all of Microsoft at that point. But the confusion between... So you already have a hated operating system on the PC, like the straight up Intel stuff, Windows 8, and you get this RT thing, which is that but crippled, right? It's like, so there was a lot that went wrong there. But the thing was, it wasn't the hardware that failed, right? It was
And see, a lot of people are mixing that up in the comments. I'm still saying no, the Surface RT was cancelled. Windows RT was cancelled. The Surface 2-in-1 form factor that the Surface RT pioneered wasn't cancelled. That's still the most popular Surface to this day. That's what the Surface Pro 7 and the Surface Pro X are based on. That initial design from the Surface RT. Basically, what I'm saying here is, let's imagine the Duo was running Windows at launch. We could see two versions of the Surface Duo with Windows, and then Duo 3 would be running Android. Would you call the Surface Duo... Was the Surface Duo killed? No, they changed operating systems. Technically, the same thing happened with the Surface RT, which then they moved on with the Surface 3, the non-Pro Surface 3, to full Windows. Like the RT version was gone, they moved on to full Windows. Then the Surface Go and Go 2. They're all part of the same non-Surface Pro line, in my opinion. Then we have the Surface Pro line, which has always been the same, all full fat Windows. That's not been cancelled. So Dan's right, none of the Surfaces have been cancelled. Even the Surface tables from 2008 got a second version. They got a Surface Table 2. Even that thing got a second generation. So it's like, Dan's right. We're going to see a Duo 2. We will at least see a Duo 2 before they decide to pull the plug. But I do not think they will pull the plug after Duo 2. There's no reason for them to.
Yeah. And I think because we're already seeing, I talked to Michael Fisher about this. He's very excited about this. And he's pretty skeptical. I mean, he did a whole video about why he thought foldables were better than dual screens ultimately. But now I've been talking to him. He's actually very excited about this device. Dan Bader from Android Central, a couple of the guys from Android Central, very excited about this device. So there's definitely some fire there. I'll also point out, even if we give you the Surface RT being a failure, canceled, I'll give you that. That was 2014 when it happened.
Sure.
There hasn't been a Surface since Nadella took over that's been canceled. You can't name me one.
Surface Hub has a second version.
Yeah.
You know, every single Surface has had at least 2 versions, and I think that's pretty good. And which means we have at least one more Surface Duo on the way.
And I'll say Surface Studio is a really good comparison, like analogy to what Duo is.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because Studio is this, all the engineering is the display and hinge. That's all Studio. What you're paying for on Studio is the display.
$3,000.
Yeah. And I was told that. I mean, it's basically $2,000 of that is the display and hinge. But then you look at Studio, so it's super expensive. It's super niche, right? It's also shipped with what? It has a laptop processor in it. If the first version shipped with a gimped kind of GPU, it had a spinning hard disk.
And guess what? I bought one.
And you got one, and we got one too. And then, Studio 2 came out. They have an SSD processor, still a laptop processor, just a newer one. GPU, definitely a better GPU, but still, this isn't a super powerful what you would expect for $3,000. But Studio still plays a part, and they haven't canceled Studio, and we do expect probably do a Studio 3, maybe even this fall. So, yeah, this is where I think that argument falls flat.
And a lot of people as well saying Microsoft is just trying to recapture the magic they found with the original Surface form factor. You know, how they changed the game with the 2-in-1 and that was what became the most popular form factor or whatever. And they haven't really done it since. I don't know if they're trying to do it with the Duo, because there's no, maybe they are with Surface Neo, but when it comes to the Duo and it running Android, there's no benefit in them pioneering a form factor that's then copied by everybody else, because they don't get a cut in that. They're not running Android. The only scenario where that benefits them is if those devices are shipped with Microsoft software, Microsoft Android that's pre-installed, which most of them won't, right? But maybe Samsung's will. But
the changes that they do in Android to make this happen are upstream, meaning other OEMs can actually use that code. It's not proprietary.
Yeah, I guess the one benefit would be that if everybody starts making dual screen Android phones, then app developers will adopt, and the Duo benefits that way. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, and Panos has said this. Like they do want other OEMs to make dual screen devices and use their own code to push this category forward. Because and this goes into a really interesting topic. Some people have said, Surface Duo is a holdover until they can do foldable display. That's better, cheaper, uses inking and all that. I disagree 100%. I'm going to make a prediction here. Surface Duo will never turn into a foldable display device.
I agree.
They may do a foldable device later on, a different device. Mm-hmm. I still don't think they will, but they may, right? They may turn Surface Pro into that at some point down in the future. But Duo will always be dual screen. First of all, it's called Duo.
Yeah.
Should tell you something. But they didn't do dual screens because they couldn't do foldable. Not at all. The engineering that went to make this device happen is actually more complicated than a folding screen because they had to mirror everything. It's got 2 gyroscopes. It's got 2 light sensors. The displays sync to each other for color calibration and brightness. They had to separate the batteries. They had to separate the motherboard. Everything that went to this, it was way more complicated than just putting it into a single device. But the theory behind dual screens, and what they've done is internal testing at their human factors lab, with including electroencephalography measuring neural output and basically how much work it takes. They did tests with single screen devices, single screen foldable devices, and dual screen. And I'm going to try to do a deeper piece on this, but what they found was that when you use dual screens, the brain basically perceived it as less effort. It was easier for the brain to sort of manage information. And then they actually asked the people which you preferred. This is called self-reporting. and the self-reporting matched that, which is always a nice result you want to have. Um, and so the theory behind dual screen is it's a concept here that they believe in terms of segmenting things, opening things on different displays. So no, I don't think Duo will ever be a foldable single screen device. I'm going to say that here
Yeah.
now. Um, you know,
If anything, I think maybe the Neo might eventually end up a foldable because I feel like
sure.
single screen foldables makes more sense the bigger the screen. But the reason dual screen makes sense on such a small device is because if you do try to do two things at once, you have to close the thing you're in currently and go into the other thing to do that second task. On a big screen device, that's not an issue. You just snap side by side, problem solved. Snapping apps, although you can do them on phones, pain in the backside. It's a rubbish experience. Android's never done it well. Dual screens solves that problem. Even the Fold, the Galaxy Fold, it has a big enough screen to split out side by side. I never do it
Yeah.
because the UX is rubbish and it's just not worth it. Two screens, it's built in. It just makes way more sense to do it that way.
And someone reminded me, yeah, in terms of the hinge and the gap, first of all, compared to LG's device, it's way thinner. Like, if you want to see a gap and that seam, go check out the LG Velvet and how it does it. But again, this is kind of a solvable problem, and we know this because Microsoft has a patent, and this patent is super interesting. I imagine production in terms of making it happen is difficult, but their patent has the display going towards the center curves, just like how the a Galaxy, the Note 20 Ultra, right? It has a fall off, right? How that curves down. So instead of making the screen just come to an end and then you have the gap, the screen curves into basically the binder. If this was like a book, just like how pages naturally curve down, right? Continuing that metaphor. And this will be a very familiar metaphor because the Duo already acts like a little book. So now you curve the display towards the inner part, just like a binder. But they also have an optical trick that they do. So the light emanating out of that curve, since it would now shoot towards a different angle, right? Not at a perpendicular one. They have technology that would reorientate the light so it comes through, meaning that when you look at it, you don't see the curve happening like you do on other devices, like how it distorts. You don't get that distortion effect. So then you'd be able to have material going right up to the edge of the actual curve of the display, and your brain will perceive it as a single unit. And this also now allows you to have almost no seam between the device. So they're thinking about this stuff.
Not only that, though, but that design, which I assume they will eventually incorporate. I don't know if it will be a Duo 2 or a Duo in the far future. But that the idea that the screens curve into the sort of hinge bit slightly means when the Duo's closed, those screens are slightly exposed. And that solves the issue with it not having an outer screen. Instead, the spine is the heads-up display. When a notification comes in, it says, Twitter, Daniel said this, or phone call from XXX. That I think is a super cool design. And I think, again, I don't know if this is something that they're actually planning to incorporate into a future Duo device, but it's something that they're thinking about, right? And it just paints a bright picture for the future of this form factor, in my opinion. How the cool stuff they can eventually do with it when they find the room, when they can make the room for these additions to the hardware.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think you'll ever see them do a single screen. And I've talked to Steve Batchy about this and a couple of the other engineers. I asked them these questions, and they didn't choose dual screen, like I said, for pragmatic reasons. They chose it for philosophical reasons. Like there's a theory behind this. And they're not going to invest all this money into the Duo and solving all these problems only to go completely wipe it. And another good example of this, we talk about it all the time, is something like Surface Book or Surface Laptop. Surface Laptop is a straight up laptop. They didn't put a 360 hinge in there. They kind of could have, right? They could have made that device, but they didn't. They made a straight up laptop. And Surface Book also has a detachable display. And a lot of us internally have debated, and some people have done this publicly too, how many people actually separate that display? Yet despite that, and Microsoft says actually a lot of professionals do. I'll believe them. But the fact is, we're 3 versions of Surface Book, and there's no signs they're going to get rid of that design. So when Microsoft chooses designs and form factors, like, have you noticed how conservative the Surface line has actually been? they don't radically change things. Like
Yeah.
Surface Pro has had like what two and a half major redesigns, and we're on
Yeah,
version
it
7.
was so Surface 1 and 2, Surface Pro 1 and 2 were the
Yep.
first version. Pro 3, so technically Pro 7 is one edition. I know the Surface Pro 3 and Surface Pro 4, I think, had slightly thinner bezels
Yes.
between the two, but I count them all as one sort of
They
form
changed the
factor.
displays a little bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
but then of course Surface Pro X, which is the most radical redesign to the hardware yet, in my opinion, for the Pro form factor. The book hasn't had that. Neither has the Studio or the laptop.
Right.
So I will be interested to see where the book goes next, because I think we
Yes.
are overdue a design refresh for the Surface Book, and I will wonder if they stick with the detachable or if they do eventually go 360. Because if Microsoft are going to do a 360 hinge on any laptop form factor they've got, I think it'll be the book more than the laptop.
Yeah, that's a whole separate thing. Because when it comes to hinges for them, they invent
Yeah.
hinges. They call them the Hingineers. I've seen jokes on from Microsoft people that Microsoft is a hinge company that occasionally makes hardware and software. So I wonder if they were to do that, it wouldn't be the current hinges we're seeing. I don't think they would just be like, oh, Lenovo, your hinges, and HP, because they're all using kind of the same hinge now. I don't think they'll just be like, oh, we'll just stick that in our device and boop, same thing. Like I feel like there'd have to be a twist. There's always a twist that Microsoft has to do to evolve that category further versus going like, oh, those hinges everybody's been using for 2 years, we're going to use that now. Like that doesn't scream Surface to me. But
You know what it would be? It would be the hinge is now 360 degrees, but it also detaches.
yeah, right, yeah.
So great,
Like a
thanks
magnet or
Microsoft.
Yeah, who knows? But oh well. That's Surface Duo. A lot more coming on Duo as we approach that September 10th availability date, and we may get some more sneak peeks of the device before then. I don't want to foreshadow, but Dave Lee obviously has a device, so it's presumable that others may get a device soon too. Just a little foreshadowing. All right, Xbox Series S.
What about it?
Biggest secret. Yeah, the biggest secret that we all know about. So why are we saying confirmed in quotes?
Because Microsoft's new controller packaging sort of confirmed it, right? So last week, I think it was, a batch of Microsoft's upcoming Xbox Series X/S controllers got out into the world and were sort of being bought on the black market. And the retail packaging for those controllers on the side of it says compatible with Xbox One, Windows 10 PC, Android, iOS, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S. So that all but confirms that the cheaper Scarlet console that Microsoft is working on will indeed be called the Xbox Series S. To the surprise of no one, because Microsoft has already done this with the Xbox One series, with the Xbox One X, and the Xbox One S. So, confirmed that yes, it will be called the S. We still don't know what it will look like. We know most of the specs. We know that the CPUs are the same. The GPUs clocked a bit lower. But it should be a very capable 1080p next-gen gaming console, which a lot of people will like because A, it's not as expensive, and B, loads and loads of gamers still have 1080p TVs and monitors. So what's the point in buying a 4K console if you don't have a 4K monitor or TV to go along with that? Why not save a few bucks by getting the Series S instead? It can play all the same games, has the same CPU, but just with a slightly lower clocked graphics card or a different graphics chip so that it doesn't have to output 4K. And obviously the lower price will be a big fighter in the Xbox versus PlayStation war, which is still ongoing to this day. Obviously, we're expecting PS5 to be super expensive. Series X will also probably be super expensive. Series S can slot in lower than both of them and hopefully take the cake. But yeah, we'll have to see. The rumor was they were going to announce this console this month, but we've had no announcement that there's an event coming. No indication that will be the case. So, we're getting close, right? Series X is supposed to be launching in November. So there's only a few months to go, and they still haven't announced this console or pricing for either of them. And I think they're still waiting for PlayStation to make the first move there before they announce the Series S, because they can't really announce the Series S without also announcing pricing, because that's the biggest reason for the Series S existing, is the fact that it costs less. So if they announced it without the price, it'd be like, well, I don't see the point. What's the point? I don't get it. So that's what I think Microsoft is waiting on, which is going to be super exciting. But what isn't super exciting is the fact that Halo Infinite has been delayed. So when PlayStation fans say, oh, Xbox has no games, like the Series X has no launch titles, I mean, they kind of mean it now, because Halo Infinite was supposed to be the launch title for Xbox Series X, and it's not going to be there. 343 Industries announced that Halo Infinite is behind schedule thanks to COVID and all the other stuff that's gone on this year, and that they're going to push it into 2021. They didn't give an exact time frame. They just said sometime in 2021. Could be January 2021. I doubt it. It'll probably be more like mid-20 or even late 2021. And I think the reason they made this delay, there's a number of reasons. One, the backlash from the graphics demo that they did. Obviously, we talked about this a few episodes ago. The Halo Infinite gameplay demo that was shown off in July. A lot of people reacted to that quite negatively in the sense that the graphics didn't look next gen. They looked very current gen, and I think they're taking that criticism on board and trying to improve it where possible. But also I think other parts of the game just aren't ready. Like I think Forge might not be ready, the multiplayer also might not be ready, and all thanks to COVID and the fact that they had to rebuild the engine. They're using the new Slipspace engine, and that's taken time to do. So it's a real shame, but I would rather them take their time and release a complete game that works than release a broken game. Because remember, they're trying to push Infinite as a service, and the worst thing you can do is launch a game broken, because then people leave and they don't come back. I think that happened to Anthem, and I think it happened to Sea of Thieves. Although I think Sea of Thieves got its mojo back eventually. Yes. But that doesn't happen.
Thieves is doing quite well.
That doesn't always happen. You don't always win your audience back. So it's safer to just launch when it's 100% good to go, rather than it's 70% good. Like this feature will be coming later. This doesn't work yet. That's not a great way to go about it, especially if your game is a service.
Actually, it's kind of interesting because that's how Panos feels about the way Surface Duo looks. Like he basically says you kind of get one shot to impress people in terms of the hardware and the engineering thing. And if the device looks ugly or hideous, it usually does.
Right. And I think that's why there's no camera on the outside, because they know it looks stupid. So they were like, we for Gen 1, we've got to make this look beautiful. And I think they have. Although the bezels are a bit thick, at least from the outside, Duo looks like it's from the future. And I love that about it. When it's sitting on a table, I think it looks amazing, the Duo.
We should also mention Kensington has... I'm excited about this because back in the day when I rock a trio, trios are too big to put in your pocket, so you would get a side holster on your belt like a true nerd. And they had some really nice ones that would like clip in and all of this. So Kensington has a clip-on holster for your belt made specifically for Surface Duo. It should be on Windows Central now. I will be getting one in. Want to do my review and stuff like that, but... I know nothing screams older white guy.
Yeah, I've got to say, Dan, this is not like you for me.
I may try. What I wanted, and I'm still looking for, because these are on Amazon, is basically the Han Solo look. I want they make like a little canvas bag,
it's called midlife crisis,
pocket that goes on your thigh and has like attaches to the belt and loops around. That's pretty badass looking.
I'm just gonna put mine in my pocket.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably end up using the pocket when I don't want to wear a thigh saddle. Going to the supermarket or something.
God, they've got to be.
But I'm going to try the belt thing. The thing about the belt, you laugh, but it's super practical. And what's kind of cool is it actually frees your pockets up.
And it also tells everyone that you've got a Duo.
And it shows on your belt, right? Like, yeah, but the downside of that is I have to start tucking my shirt in. You don't have to. But if you really want to, and like, I'm not that nerdy. I don't really tuck my shirts in. But then you can just have your shirt kind of flowing over it. Perhaps you won't notice. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of like, listen, you look at Star Wars, they all have utility belts. Utility belts... They could be done right.
Yeah, but nobody is stylish in Star Wars.
But it looks, I think so. Boba Fett looks pretty awesome. Are you kidding me?
I guess.
I'm just saying when you see stuff in the future, not that Star Wars is future. Don't come at me with that. I know. But in future stuff, like people have like kind of, like every time I see futuristic movies, everybody has those like in Brave New World, everybody has these like silk shirts and it's just very minimalist and clean. I'm like, we could do this now. Like we could all agree as a society just to make those clothes and wear them. Like we could agree as a society to just wear Star Wars clothes. There are sites. There's one I was just looking at recently. They make all the clothes from video games. And like you walk around, like we could agree to just look like that, but we don't. And it bothers me.
Who decides fashion trends? That's what I've always wondered. Who decides what's now in fashion?
People in New York City and Paris, they decide. And then a lot of us just wear jeans.
We need
and
to
a t-shirt.
infiltrate those locations and get and get this holster, Surface Duo holster in the fashion sense.
I'm telling you, if I was smart and I had connections, I would be making like cool Surface things to carry it around. But
I've realised we were done with the Duo, but now we're back on it.
I know.
Real quick, are you going to get a D-brand skin for your Duo? Because I've ordered one already.
Yes, I have one on order.
Yeah, I got the marble one. I think it was. I can't remember now.
I should be able to I should be able to message them and try to. I pay for my D-brand. I don't.
Yeah,
have
me
a
too. We're not
sponsorship.
sponsored by D-brand.
We're like the one people in the world that doesn't apparently. But yeah, but I did the matte white and the blue logo.
I got the matte white as well. Yeah.
It would be cool if they came out with like a leather one to really complete the book feel, but maybe they will eventually. There's a lot of stuff we're gonna be doing on this device, man. It's gonna be pretty excited. So yeah, Halo Infinite. All right, let's talk about Microsoft Flight Simulator. I find this game funny because I'm old enough to remember the original flight simulators and how kind of goofy they were. Very kind of DOS screen, and the graphics weren't great. But people got really into flight sims. I never did because it's the same reason someone asked if I play the UFC games, and I don't because they're too realistic. Like you can't even jump. Like if I can't, this is a problem I had with Gears of War at first. You're like, I can't jump. Why can't I jump?
Why am I stuck to the ground?
Yeah, like it's standard video game fare. You could jump on things. And you can't do that in UFC. And flight sims to me have always been like too serious, you know? That said, so the new flight sim's been in development for years. It's crazy huge. It's 150 gigabytes, so make sure you have.
Well, it does have the whole world in it.
Yeah, and it uses the Bing mapping and photorealistic geometry stuff, and they had a company that mapped and did all this stuff, and it's insane. All it means is when you fly around the world, it's like basically 100% accurate. Although
there are some anomalies.
A growing form of entertainment is people finding glitches, and it's very much like Inception when they bend the worlds and stuff like that happens. But people are doing some crazy things. There was a live stream on Twitch the other day that went for 18 hours. They actually recreated the flight from, I believe it was LA to Abu Dhabi, I think it was.
Or Dubai,
it was a single,
Or
Dubai, yeah. It was a single 18-hour flight. They had a mock cockpit, and they did it from that. It was totally insane. But people are doing this kind of stuff. And I started my training, and because it's just like a Cessna, and the training modules are okay. Sometimes they'd be like, and now do the throttle or match your RPMs. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, so I had some issues with it, but it's still fun. So it trains you through the process, including taking off. And you can use an Xbox controller and keyboard, which is what I'm doing now. But I do have like a full throttle kit coming, hopefully eventually. They're selling out, apparently. All these throttle kits, and we have a best guide if you're curious. We have, shout out to Matt Brown, who did a lot of work on our flight sim coverage. We have a whole guide just on the hardware you can buy for yokes and flight sticks, also tips and tricks and all this kind of stuff. But to get that real experience, you get the flight yoke and the throttle, all that. So I'm looking forward to getting that stuff. I do have, as if I bragged about, it's not even a humble brag. I'm just going to brag. I have a Core i9, 64 gigs of RAM, and a 2080 Ti with SCSI SSDs. Not SCSI, sorry, RAID SSD. And I'm able to put it on Ultra, play it at 2K resolution, and still hit 50 frames per second. And it's been it's a wild game.
It's a very pretty game.
Yeah, it's very relaxing and chill. And I think that's why some people pointed this out. If there was an ideal time to release this game, it was when everybody's basically locked at home, kind of stressed out, because you can fire this thing up. The music that comes on reminds me of going to like a spa. It's very just like relax, just chill out. Like, I don't know. Have you been able to play this at all?
So I haven't played the new Flight Sim because I have a Surface Studio, and that's not very good at gaming. But I'm waiting because it is coming to Xbox Series X eventually. So I'll probably get it when it gets that. But I did play the last big installment to the Microsoft Flight franchise, which I think was Flight Simulator X. I played a ton of that. But unfortunately, that version didn't have multiplayer, but there was a multiplayer mod you can get, and I remember being on those multiplayer mods and just flying around and just being stupid all the time. It was super fun, because it is a very serious simulation game, and you can find servers, at least in the old one, and I guess the new one as well, where like people are really pretending to be real pilots and are talking to each other over air traffic control and like using the actual call signs. And then here's me, who isn't a pilot.
Right.
So, hey guys, I'm here. I'm just going to land over there. I hope it's okay. Crashing into things and stuff. But that's all built into the actual game now with the new Microsoft Flight Simulator. You don't need any mods for that. You can just literally join the lobby. I think you can fly with your friends and stuff. I'm sure you can get into each other's planes and sit in the cockpit. We should do a podcast where we fly somewhere.
We should. I have not even explored any of that yet. I've just been kind of walking through the training modules.
Yeah,
so.
But yeah, because you can do the training stuff, or you can just dive straight in, and again, it's a very serious simulation, so you can try and make it as real as possible, where you have to flick every single switch in the cockpit and stuff, or you can make it on easy mode, where
right.
A is go, you pull back on the stick and you fly. There's different levels for everybody. So if you have a gaming PC, because it is only on PC right now, I recommend giving it a go, because it's a nice one of those sort of relaxing, I'm just going to try out games, and then you end up spending 10 hours in it because you've just been messing around, flying over your house and stuff, and just having a good time.
Someone's asking what throttle I'm getting. I'm getting the Logitech one, but it's only because we're trying to work out a thing where I get it for free. But they're like apparently like selling out everywhere. I know on Dell, I think Dell has a few still for sale, but there's been apparently a big, like a lot of people have just been buying these throttles and flight sticks and all this, and it's been really, I think Jez was telling us like something about like a $2 billion they're expecting in new PC hardware and sales because of this thing. And it's been fun to see, even just on Twitter and social media, just how much people have been playing around with this. What I would consider a very niche sort of, you said it, it's like, I mean, some of this gets super realistic, right? And it's like, you have really nerdy, like actual pilots who will use this. And you have people like you and me who are like, for the record, I actually used to fly a Cessna occasionally.
Oh, wow.
I was in the Civil Air Patrol as a teenager, as a staff sergeant, and we would train on Cessnas and do search and rescue exercises. I was actually going to go to the Air Force Academy, but then I became an anarchist and discovered technology. So,
see, it's funny. This game as well, as someone who's never flown a real plane, if there's ever a scenario where in real life I'm on a plane and one of the attendants comes down and says, "Is there a pilot on board?" I'm going to stand up and go, I've done Flight Simulator. I can fly this plane, and realize I can't.
Yeah, but you say that, but it's so like back in the day, like you would have a couple of gauges, but that was it. But now you're in a photorealistic cockpit of a Cessna,
and every button works.
Yeah, it's like 1-to-1. Like I'm pretty sure like it'd be weird to sit in a real cockpit, right. But technically that memory should kind of kick back in. Like,
I'm sure the lives of all 130 passengers on board, yes. Or that weight doesn't affect your performance in any way.
Well, it's like that TV show we both recommend. You recommended it. I watched too. Into the Night. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, Netflix. But do you remember that scene? They're like trying to figure out how to land.
Yeah. And they watch a YouTube video. Oh yeah.
They watch YouTube videos. Like I was like, I could almost believe that, but I think they did it like in a half hour. It's like, well, come on. Like, that's at least, I learn new things on YouTube. That's at least a 2-hour thing. But yeah, so Flight Sim, it's free on Game Pass. Another solid reason to get Game Pass. In fact, I told Barnacle, like he was debating should he get it on Steam or Microsoft. And I was just like, listen, dude, Game Pass, $15. And I showed him all the games that are available on Game Pass. I'm like, this is kind of a no-brainer. It's already what you're kind of paying for gold anyway. It's like $5 extra a month. And when it comes to Xbox, you'll get it there too. But it's a really great deal. But yeah, you really need a good PC with this. Maybe it's a good opportunity to upgrade your PC. And you'll probably want to get a flight yoke if you get into it seriously, because I think it's going to make it a lot easier. I'm not loving the Xbox controller keyboard thing. It's a little funky. I'm sure you can get used to it. But
and you should also hire an attendant to come in and ask if you want tea every now and then.
Yeah. I just picture on South Park when he's playing World of Warcraft, that guy. Just put a flight yoke in front of him. Sorry, honey. I'm flying to Europe. I'll be gone for the next 6 hours.
Because that's the thing, you can
Like,
do it in real time. It's not like a shrunken
you
down
could,
version of the world.
right?
You can do these flights in real time, and not only that, it also pulls in actual flight air traffic
Weather
data and live
in the
weather
weather.
as well. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. So you can actually fly to somewhere in the world and experience the weather that actual pilots flying in that area are experiencing right now. And you can also fly alongside those planes. Although obviously you won't show up to them. You know, they're showing up to you, and you can like fly around them and stuff and actually watch them do what they're doing. It's such a cool. It's so much for a flight simulator game.
Yeah,
They went above and beyond in every area they could, and I think it's great.
Yeah, there was a few weeks ago. There was the tropical storm, was the hurricane that turned to a tropical storm on the East Coast here, and people using Flight Sim were like flying around and into this storm in like real time. Yeah, it's bonkers. I mean, it's they took a long time to make a sequel to this game, right? Or I don't know if it's a third version. I haven't followed, but it's like it's worth it. Like the amount of technology they've been able to bring to this and make, it's just like a whole other level. And it's it's not a violent game. Your kid can play it. I mean, for parents and kids,
Yeah,
it's kind of
actually, to be fair, that is the worst thing. There's no physics for when you actually crash. Like, it just says, oh, you crashed. It's like, oh, I want to see my plane explode. But no, apparently not.
I think they did that for good reason.
Yeah,
but there's
I agree.
there was that joke meme, which because you can put the camera outside of your airplane and snap photos and stuff like that of flying, which is awesome. And what people it was alleged, but it's not really a thing. But they're like a new form of cyberbullying is flying your plane into
Yeah.
people's houses. And
Yeah.
like so, like if I knew Zach's house, I would fly the plane into his house, and right before
Take a
impact,
screenshot.
I'd snap a photo. And there's like a picture of like this little house with this like, it's like 787 about to like impact. It was so disturbing to send to people. But I was like, that's actually really funny.
The other thing I saw as well was a bunch of people in a lobby flew to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and the tweet was like, we're going to try and solve this problem ourselves.
But that just made them all the Lolita Express. Which
Oh, damn.
we just crossed the line on this podcast. We got a little bit serious there for a second. But
Time to wrap
anyway,
up.
that is the beauty of Flight Sim. Go try it out. If you have Game Pass, it's for free. If you don't have Game Pass, go get Game Pass, man. It's you know what? Although sidetrack, the Epic Store, I finally saw that on the PC. They had that game Control on sale for like $30, and that game intrigued me. Still haven't played it yet, but I bought it and downloaded it. But the Epic Store is actually pretty rad. Like they give you like pop-up notifications every once in a while. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, really? Then I look, I'm like, ooh, a free game. Click. So I've been just like installing free games from them.
Yeah.
Because they put things on free sale basically. Like Into the Gungeon, that game, which has been pretty popular. That one's free right now, and some other game. So, the Epic Store, despite them going to war with Apple.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
They won't win.
We'll talk about that next week along with TikTok. I just remembered I had a dream this morning, and it was work related, and it was basically people going, they did it. They Microsoft bought TikTok. Wow.
That's a sad dream.
Well, that's that late morning hallucinating dream where you're kind of done sleeping. You're just laying there.
Yeah.
But clearly my mind was on other things. Anyway, I say we wrap up the podcast. We went long again, but hopefully you got all your Surface Duo fill, as well as our rants about flying planes into people's houses, which I do not recommend you do. That's not nice. Anyway, we're going to do Q&A now with the audience. So if you're listening to this live, you get to now ask us questions that we talked about on the podcast or things we didn't address. We'll try our best to answer those, so start asking those. If you're listening to this recorded, however, you do not get to hear that, unfortunately, which is all the more reason for you to join us Fridays, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, Windows Central, where you can see our live video broadcast as well as the chat we do with the audience. We have between 400 and 700 people usually joining in, so it's actually a lot of fun. So join in for that. You can also go to that YouTube channel, rewatch our video broadcast if that's your thing. Other than that, though, you can follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, and follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. You also want to pay attention probably to my Instagram. same thing, Daniel_Rubino, because Surface Duo is coming out, and I'll probably be posting photos when I do get that device, as well as Zach too. As always, though, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you wear a mask, and don't forget to get your early votes in. Mail-in voting. Do it. I did it myself this week. Take care, everybody.
Cool. Someone's asking, why won't Epic win? Other publishers are agreeing with them. Well, because it's Apple's App Store, and Epic came in and broke the rules. The only way Apple will lose this is if an antitrust body of some kind comes in and explicitly says you have to change your App Store policy. Apple aren't going to budge otherwise. Apple don't admit defeat unless they absolutely have to. That's my 2 cents on it anyway.
Some of them, well, they used, I'll just censor it. Wasn't Oracle going to buy TikTok? So now Oracle and who else? Yeah, someone else was mentioned as interested in buying it. We don't know the level of discussion there. I mean, the last we heard, Microsoft was kind of in deep. I think Oracle buying them would be really weird, even weirder than Microsoft, but who knows? Everybody knows it's a cash cow. I said it made $20 billion in 2019, and it doesn't do anything except show ads, right? I mean, all the content is generated by the user. So it's like, it's any American company would be smart to try to buy it. It's just kind of a terrible way to acquire a company, But.
Does the Surface Neo have a SIM card slot for mobile plans? I assume you mean LTE data.
The Neo.
Yeah, the
right?
PC.
So I was told initially that I don't think it does, or they wouldn't answer the question.
I'd be surprised if it doesn't, though. It seems like the perfect device for it.
But I remember, I could be wrong, but I remember asking that, and I may go through my notes again.
Maybe some high-quality photos that will show if it has a SIM slot. Let me see.
I was told it didn't have it, but I don't know. But I mean, that was so long ago, and now it's delayed even further. I feel like that could all change.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'll just reiterate that I desperately would appreciate it having a SIM card, obviously. Any news on potential Surface Duo car mount? Nope. But I'm sure we'll see those from third parties. I expect to see quite a few third-party accessories come out for this, not like iPhone level, but you'll see companies. Kensington's already doing at least that holster. I wouldn't be surprised they have more stuff coming out. There are specific partners Microsoft works with. Like Kensington had access to like some kind of physical prototype, right, to make this case, because it's a one-to-one thing. This isn't like a generic case. And so Microsoft has some partners. So you're going to see some probably initial official Surface branded accessories come out. Then we'll start to see some, stuff coming out of China probably. But yeah, the car mount, right? It depends. If you want to mount it closed, that's easy. If you want to mount it open, that could be interesting, right? You can do like a map on there or something. And how would you do that? I don't know. Like you could just grip the bottom half, have it open like a laptop. I don't know. That could be interesting. There's a lot of, everybody's gonna have to kind of rethink accessories here and what you can kind of do with this stuff.
If US sales exceed expectations, will Microsoft increase Duo availability or still stick with their strategy and increase Duo 2 numbers instead? So I assume when you say availability, you're talking about outside the US. And it's a good question. As far as I'm aware, one of the reasons why it's not launching elsewhere is because they are worried that it won't sell in other markets. If it does do well in the US, then I wouldn't be surprised if we do see it launch in other markets next year. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I am hearing that if it is going to launch in other markets, that won't be happening until early 2021. But that also might not happen. If it doesn't sell well in the US, then they won't. I don't think they'll go with try and launch it out anywhere else at all. And they'll just wait for Duo 2 and then launch it in the US and elsewhere, possibly then. But yeah, it will depend. It launching in other markets will depend on whether it does well in the US initially. So tell your American friends to buy one.
Dan, did you ever get to the end of the German series Dark? I did, and it messed with my head big style. I have not. That is a slog of a show for me. I'm in middle of season 2, and I haven't really picked it up since. I actually just started watching Succession on HBO, which I'm enjoying tremendously. Maybe I'll finish Dark, but I couldn't. It's just been. It's a tough show for me to really get excited about. It's just, yeah. Does Duo have 2 sim slots? Good question. I should have plugged the FAQ. Make sure you go to Windows Central. We have the FAQ posted on the front page. It's over 3,000 words long at this point. The short answer to that question, it has SIM and eSIM, except for the AT&T model, which only has SIM. Now, if you buy the unlocked model, you get SIM and eSIM. It is not, however, technically classed as a dual SIM device, meaning you can't have both radios active at the same time. It means you can have 2 different carriers on there and then switch between them. So it's good for traveling. You want to put a roaming SIM or something like that, or an eSIM on there. You can switch over to it, but you can't operate both at the same time.
Any idea if you can put the Duo in your pocket open? Not at 180 degrees. You can do it with the screens out at 360 degrees if you really wanted to. You can treat it as screens on the outside if you want. There's no reason you can't, because the glass is the same on either side. It's Gorilla Glass 6. I can't remember what it is.
I think it's 5, actually.
Even worse.
Yeah.
Gorilla Glass 5 on inside and the outside, so it's going to scratch much the same whether you're using it in whichever form. But I'm going to have mine closed though. I'm just going to keep the screens protected.
Do you know anything about Duo Gallery app and OneDrive integration? I don't think we do.
It is OneDrive. So the OneDrive has a photos area, and that's where your photos are. But it also has Google Photos pre-installed, which I think might act as the default gallery experience. But you can obviously change that.
And there's no integration. But I mean, you don't really. This is why I always found the Samsung thing kind of weird, because like, if you have OneDrive installed, you can enable camera roll backup through that OneDrive app. So I don't see. I mean, well, I guess if it's built into the Google app, you can then see your OneDrive photos.
I think so. Because the Google Photos app just acts as a local gallery viewer as well, and in addition to it being the cloud service Google Photos, you don't have to use that though. And when you set up the Duo for the first time, there'll be a screen that says, "Would you like to back up photos to OneDrive?" And that's where you can say yes or no.
I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with their own photos gallery app at some point. It's not rocket science.
Eventually, but for version 1, like the phone app, the messages app, gallery, they're all Google built.
Any thoughts on processor speed of Duo? Yeah, the recent Geekbench scores suggested it performed better than Fold. Any ideas why? I mean, it could be just the thermals. We don't really know. I don't want to put, until I get the device myself, I don't want to comment on that.
And the difference is negligible. You won't notice it in real world usage.
Yeah, I mean, that's why a lot of us, the Snapdragon was the 855 versus the 65. The main difference is actually, honestly, 5G support. I know there's other stuff on there, but the speed thing, I think it's kind of like, even most pro reviewers are kind of like, the 855 is actually a really fast and good processor. So I don't think it's going to feel sluggish, but we don't know, right? I mean, when I get it, we'll do benchmarks and all that jazz, and we'll see. But initial reporting on this supposedly shows that it's performing better than your average 855, which is a good thing. That's just something you would kind of want. I think a lot of people were expecting it would be the same or slower. But if it's like a really fast 855, that's pretty cool.
Do you have any info on the small Microsoft keyboard that Walking Cat leaked? It would be great for the Duo. It's not actually that small. I'm pretty sure. Oh, they knocked my thing over. I'm pretty sure it's literally like this up to here. Without this bit on the end. So it's essentially a full-size keyboard without the numpad and stuff. And it's a desktop keyboard. It will be for desktop, like desks and PCs and whatnot. It's part of a lineup of accessories Microsoft is working on, which I guess will be announced in October. They also have a cheaper version of this mouse on the way. So this is the Microsoft Precision mouse. They have a Microsoft ergonomic Bluetooth mouse on the way, which is basically exactly the same as this, except has one less button here, and it doesn't have the interchangeable click wheel thingamabob that this one does. And it'll be a lot cheaper as well. What else do they have coming? There was something else I can't remember off the top of my head. I think there's another accessory. But yeah, they have a bunch of accessories in the works for the fall, which I believe will be announced alongside whichever hardware gets announced in October, November.
Do you know how the orders are going for Duo? We talked about this on the podcast just from our own sites. I said just from our site, we had a few hundred people pre-order.
Which is
a
big number.
Yeah, and that means nothing without comparison. We'll just say, compared to other Surface announcements, it was higher than we expected. It caught the attention of a lot of people in our company because they didn't think we would pre-sell that many. But it's been higher than expected and higher than most kind of Surface releases that we've covered in the past. So from that perspective, pretty good. You could argue we're a core audience type thing, but still, I mean, a few hundred before reviews came out. That's pretty for a $1,300 or $1,400 device. That's surprising. I had someone on Twitter tell me he ordered his team, I think he spent $5,000 to $6,000 on pre-order, so he probably got like I think 5 of them for his company. I don't know. I don't think it's going to tank as bad as some people here think it is.
And we're never going to know exact selling numbers anyway, so there's no point even thinking about it.
Yeah, we don't know how many they'll actually sell, nor do we know how many they manufactured, nor do we know how many Microsoft would like to sell, what their internal projections are saying. We don't know any of that.
The only number we will get is, did Surface make money this quarter? Yes or no?
Right. And sometimes on those calls, I don't expect this because it's such going to be a low volume device. But on the follow-up calls that they do with investors, they could be like, Surface Duo sales were higher than anticipated.
Yeah, they could.
So that would be one sign. They mentioned something about that. Another sign Zach already mentioned is they bring it to other markets sooner than what we're hearing they may bring it to. Right? They may accelerate those plans. So that you're going to get indirect evidence for that. You also may see stuff with like more accessories, and just more media coverage of it, right? As I said on the last podcast, the worst thing for Surface Duo that a lot of you guys are missing is not poor sales. That's obviously not good. But I said that's also relative, and you and I will never know what that's supposed to be. The real threat to Duo is irrelevance. People just stop talking about it. People just lose interest. 3 months on, we're not talking about it anymore. We're on to the next big thing. And people have forgot about it. There's been no momentum at all. That's a worse fate. And that's what I would really be focusing on, not sales. But as I told you already, we saw more sales than we had expected. So there you go.
If you were to buy it now, since both Note devices have Windows integration, would you go for the Note 10 Plus or the Note 20 Ultra, given that one is almost half the price of the other? Well, for me, that comes down to whether or not you want the better camera, the better 120 Hz display, and longer support. The Note 10 Plus has been out for over a year now, or just about a year, which means it's already hit one of its 3 years of support. So it only has 2 years left, one which might only just be one more feature update and then a year of security updates. We don't know what Samsung's planning for that. Buying the Note 20 Ultra will guarantee you 3 years of OS updates, which means you can use the device for longer and still be in support of new features and app updates and all of that stuff. So I think it's worth paying the full price for the Note 20 Ultra, but you can also get a trade-in. You will probably get, Samsung's really generous with their trade-ins. They will give you quite a few $100 for your phone, unless you're using something ancient. Like if you bought a phone in the last few years, you can probably get a good few $100 for it towards the Note 20 Ultra, which is nice.
They know that this is not the best economic time to try to sell a $1,300 phone, right? So they're doing a lot of like deals and upgrades. I'll also say that 3-year upgrade thing applies to Surface Duo, and that's important because most people, the average is 2.8 years for upgrading. That's why buying Surface Duo, if you do plan on holding on to it for a couple of years, Microsoft is not going to drop support. They're very committed to 3 years of OS service and upgrades for it. And at the end of that 3 years, that's already, most Android devices are 2 years. So them doing 3 is the exception right now. It's really nice. And no one's doing 4. But most people at the end of 3 years are going to go and buy the new phone. So by then you may buy a Duo 3, or if Duo's dead at that point, you just buy the next Samsung phone.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't feel like there's a ton of risk here for outside the money.
Yeah.
Because it's not like it's going to stop working.
There's no ecosystem lock in it. If the Duo fails, it's not like you no longer have access to those apps, which is what Windows Phone had. A lot of people who bought into Windows Phone, when Windows Phone went away, all of the UWP apps they bought and stuff, they can't transfer them to other non-Windows phones. But if the Duo fails, all of the apps you bought on the Duo will work just fine on a Samsung or a Pixel or whatever. So there's way less risk. Like a lot of people say, I've been burned by Microsoft before. I don't want to buy another Microsoft product that will be left behind in a few years. But like it's not the same thing. Like you've still put the money down for hardware that you've used and made the most of for the last however many years you had it, right? The ecosystem doesn't go away when you move on to another device.
Even if when those updates come and go after 3 years, your apps will still continue to update.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, there may be eventually a point 5 years out where Instagram has a feature that requires Android 14 or something like that. But that's, I mean, they're very pretty slow on mandating that.
I know people who still use a OnePlus One. And with the Duo's unlockable bootloader, you'll probably be able to flash, Lineage OS onto it and still get the latest version of Android anyway. So that'll be cool. Any word on Graphite earbuds release? I believe they're already pre-order. They come out September 10th. Can you pre-order them already? Because I've looked. I cannot see an option for them, but I think it might just be that they go live September 10th to buy. Okay, then it's that. But they're coming. They've been announced. They're coming September 10th. So do we know if they're coming to other markets other than the US? I do not know. We should ask PR that. Yeah. Why so long on the review units for Duo? So typically Microsoft actually gives us only a week to review stuff. All I can say is, that's not really the case this time. It's not bad. I don't really have any complaints. I'm sure I would have loved it 3 weeks ago. I would have loved it 2 years ago. I mean, there's one of those things, but the amount of time they're giving sites for reviewing this device is plenty, I think. To elaborate on your question, there was also a last-minute delay. We were originally supposed to get review units the week that they announced it, so last week I think it was. That week they announced that they were pushing the date back from August 28th, the last week of August, which is what I originally reported, to September 10th, and that our review units would be moved from the week where they announced the product was going up for pre-orders to in a couple of weeks. So there was a last-minute delay. I think it had something to do with Verizon, but we're getting them soon. It was definitely Verizon. Yeah. I can definitely say it was Verizon is the reason for that delay. On September 10th, you Verizon support basically kicks in. They didn't want to start selling it without Verizon support because Verizon's a pretty big carrier here in the U.S. They're expensive. I have a Verizon account. I have Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. I use all of them. I think Verizon's a very good service. It's just very expensive, but you're getting what you pay for, I guess. What was this one? Oh yeah, go on. Someone's asking. I've just lost it. Someone's asking about developer support for the spanning apps on Surface Duo. Like, what's going on with that? Do you know who's supporting it? Stuff. So far, we only really know of 2, maybe 3. Spotify, Kindle, and then there's that art app. The photo editing app. What's that? I don't know. I sent it to you. It's in one of the articles. Jira. Jira is another app that supports it as well. Jira. Yeah, that's not what this is. I forgot the name of this app. It's an app that's available on like Mac and Apple and Windows and all this kind of stuff. It's a photo editing app, and it spans to 2 screens. Nice. So there's a handful of third-party ones. I do not expect you will find many on day one, or even I think Instagram, supposedly Instagram. Well, it's that's kind of questionable. It's not really support. It's just Microsoft went, let's just make it go the other way, and it looks like we planned it all along. But no, that's not official support. The SDK for Duo is out. Developers can start tinkering with it. Microsoft does not get a cut. Someone's asking about that. They don't get any financial benefit by you if you start to make your app span and you sell it on the store. Microsoft doesn't get
percentage of that. It's more just about the adoption.
Yeah.
I believe Microsoft. I mean, if you look at Spotify and stuff like that, like they're obviously in Kindle especially. Don't forget the LG couldn't and Samsung couldn't get Kindle to do a special app. Microsoft did, but I expect Microsoft to sort of lean on some of their software partners and companies they work with to. Facebook. I imagine Facebook is going to will be one of these apps that gets updated soon to support features like that. I wouldn't be surprised because Microsoft has a very good relationship with Facebook. So we'll see though. We'll see. That'll be part of that story that I'm talking about, whether the irrelevance thing. If in 3-4 months we see no more apps doing this and there's no major announcements, that's going to be kind of a bummer. So.
Yeah, but also not the end of the world, right? Because of how Duo's set up. If apps don't support spamming,
you don't need it.
You don't need it. You can still use those apps just fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many apps
that you'd want, right? Yeah, because I can't see why I'd want Twitter to spam, or I guess Twitter could.
Well,
do
Twitter,
it. Yeah, you could do it
because then you could have. Well, Twitter would be kind of cool. Because you can have your feed, and then you can have your mentions on one side.
That's true. Or you could have when you tap into a tweet, have the content of the tweet, and then replies on the other screen and stuff. Yeah, I could see it for Twitter. Yeah. But you're right. Not every app needs it.
Right. Gas Buddy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, there's like certain apps, like it'd be cool to have, but it wouldn't be,
We should update the Windows Central Android app to support it. Do we know who develops that?
Nope.
We should find out.
Sure, we can find out.
Yeah.
Movies and TV. No, we're not. Haven't heard anything on movies and TV coming, unfortunately. Maybe. I mean, it all depends, right? I think if this device does well and gets interest, and there's this movement there, as I mentioned, you'll see Microsoft come back to this. Of like, hey, a lot of people are really asking for a movies and TV app. Maybe they'll put it on the dock. Same thing with like a messaging app. Like, I don't really feel like they need to do their own messaging app, although they already have a garage project one. But a lot of people, if they feel like they can do something kind of cool there that the other ones aren't doing, maybe to take care, leverage, I guess, the dual screen stuff, they can do it. I'm sure they have some plans for this that they want to kick around, but they don't want to. They're not going to be like, let's do another 10 apps for this thing. Oh, we sold like 80 devices, right?
When they ship the Duo on September 11th, how many days will I have to wait for it to get to my house? Well, it comes out September 10th, and Microsoft usually are very good at shipping the day before, so it arrives on your house on the release day. They're not always this. It's not across the board. In some places, they're not able to do that. But depending on where you are, I think you should actually get it on September 10th, with any luck. If only you could just go and pick it up at a Microsoft store.
Buckster McGee says, Gas Buddy, map on one side and list on the other. But you can technically do that right now, because what's going to happen is if you had Gas Buddy on one screen and then it has like the price and then the address for that place, when you click that, if Maps is your Google Maps is your default mapping, it then will open that up on the second screen and show you the map. I guess I could do that built into Gas Buddy. I'm not necessarily sure that would be. But you'll get that same experience. Don't forget, that's free. Like that ability to open links and it pops up in the second window in a different app or something like that. That's just the way Duo operates. So devs don't need to code for that to make that happen.
Right, couple more questions, then I do have to head off.
So I mentioned about Skype. I forgot something about the numbers, all that. All I can tell you is one, Skype doesn't even ship with Duo. So
that tells you everything you need to know about Skype.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't think people really quite understand. We're living in a very different time in 2020. Single video calls with people aren't as important as video meetings have become. And you should all know this, right? That's why Zoom is a big deal. Microsoft Teams has been a big deal. You haven't really seen a lot of Google like Duo. The Google Duo app hasn't really had like a lot of. In fact, Google Duo is supposedly going to be folded into Meet, which tells you something. Apple's FaceTime. I know Apple fans rely on it, but when was the last time you saw a news story talking about COVID and the popularity of FaceTime? Right, it just hasn't happened. The world has moved towards sort of digital meetings, and to reiterate, in Teams, you can do one-on-one video calls with people. And Teams is actually powered by Skype's stuff, right? I mean, Skype is basically being transformed and merged into Teams. And Microsoft sees Teams as the future for its digital productivity. And Skype it'll be there for people who rely on VoIP and all that. But to say that it's as a standalone, its popularity is probably going down is probably true, just like Google Duo. Apparently no one uses it, which is why they want to fold it into Microsoft Meet. That's the world we're going into, and Microsoft is right there. So you'll be able to download Skype if you need it, of course. But Microsoft sees everybody switching to Teams, which, as I said, is powered by Skype anyway. So same thing.
Has Microsoft given up on moving settings from Control Panel to the new Settings app? Actually, no, the exact opposite. There's loads of it happening right now in the current dev channel builds. Check out the change logs there. Most of the builds in the last few weeks have had Control Panel settings moving into the modern Settings app.
Someone's asking about international shipping for Duo, which is something Zach is familiar with. Microsoft Store does not allow you to, I don't think, to do that.
At least I couldn't get it working, no.
Yeah. That said, someone pointed in comments, B&H, maybe Best Buy, other Amazons, right? They're going to, like right now, for instance, I can't technically buy a Huawei phone, but I can just go on Amazon and buy a Huawei phone, which is how I've done it in the past. I bought LG unlocked phones from South Korea on Amazon, right? So some companies import stuff and then they resell them on Amazon. And that's going to be one way you can get a Duo. Now, that said, you're going to probably pay more for it because you got to pay for the import fees that are going to get passed on. But expect, after initial release, you'll start to see other retailers pick this up and it may become available in your market. So,
I just got Dan to buy me one and ship it to me.
Right. Yeah. It'll be fine, though, because on the 10th, I know, like, Zach wants me to mail it out soon as I get it.
Yeah, literally, just say to the man, actually, let me walk with you down the driveway so I can.
Right. But I mean, by that point, I've already had the Duo.
Yeah, so. Exactly. So you won't be interested. You just send it off, right, Dan?
Yep.
No hanging around. Did you order mats as well?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. I know he wants to order one.
Yeah. Do you have to pay for Teams? No. There is a paid version. If you have paid Office 365, I think you get a little bit more stuff. But it's free as of right. There is a free tier, basically. That's part of the whole Teams for Family thing.
Is it really all Nadella's decision to kill off a product? I mean, killing off the Surface Mini probably had a variety of reasons, like Terry Myerson wanted to go into a different direction, etc. I don't think it's ever one sole person that makes the decision. I do think it's a team effort. Likely a vote in a boardroom where the majority, if they think it should be cancelled or if they think it should ship. It's not just Nadella making just deciding to kill things and then that's his final say. Like I would be very shocked if that's how Nadella did things. I feel like Nadella's very democratic in that he wants to talk to his peers and he wants to understand how they feel about things and put it to a vote. That's how I don't know that for a fact, of course, but I imagine that's how Nadella is.
Someone's asking about the new Surface Pro. Will it look like Pro X? I think it's safe to say it'll share similar design cues. Yes. Will it be as thin as Pro X? Very doubtful, because Pro X was built. It was only built because it runs ARM. They couldn't do that exact design with Intel. They're going to basically have to add vents, right? Physical vents to it. But the overall look, the new keyboard, the hidden slim pen, I think are probably all things that will come through the Pro series. But it'll be thicker. It'll be a little bit heavier. That kind of thing. I'm very excited. I love the Pro. Zach and I disagree on this. I'm a huge fan of the 2-in-1. I'll also point out there's a good interview with Panos, and it was with CNET. He says when the Pro came out, he didn't really consider it them reinventing a new category. He says, but in hindsight, that's exactly kind of what happens. But if you remember when that device came out, it was a tablet that could also be your laptop.
Yeah.
That was the spiel. And then eventually it became like it was the laptop that can replace your tablet. And now they just call it a laptop. They don't even call it a tablet,
Which
right?
is totally false advertising. It's still a tablet.
Yeah, but it goes to show you how much their own thing evolved as the market evolved and people's perception of what this is evolved. And remember, back when that device came out, to go again show you, people forget this all the time, when Surface Pro came out and they're like, this is the tablet that can replace your laptop, most people did not believe that. They're like, nope, that's nonsense. This cannot replace your laptop. That's a bunch of B. And it basically has now, which goes to show you how a product evolves. But it's not like people believed it when Surface Pro came out. Like, oh, we don't need laptops anymore. We have this thing. There are tons of people saying, that's not a laptop. That can't replace my laptop. So just remember that. Any more infos about the new Surface Pen? I haven't heard anything. I think there was a rumor about a microphone or something, but I don't know about anything else. They could do it the Lakefield version of Surface. Yeah, I mean, whatever comes out, we'll have a new processor. And if they do a redesign, it'll be because they probably went down to 10 nanometer and were able to shrink it down and change it, right? All that comes together. Do you think it's important for all Americans that want to fix this mess to go vote? Yeah, that's how I ended the podcast. I already voted this week myself through the mail. Hopefully no one forged my thing. It's actually a very secure system. I don't really get all that. We send personal banking information and credit cards through the mail. Yeah, go vote. It's going to be a fun election year. Hopefully it won't get violent.
And on that note, it's time to end.
Yes. Yes, I'm going to go have my lunch and take a nap.
Cool. All right, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next Friday for what I think will be a very exciting episode, so make sure you tune in for that. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live and all of that good stuff. But until then, we will see you next week. See you later.
Bye, everyone.